Chapter 88. Hearing his words, Ling Kongzi's voice suddenly changed. So, you know the second reason why I came to City of Wei? Of course Li Yunxin didn't know. But his expression didn't change. Of course I know. Otherwise, why do you think I did so much today? I was also preparing for that thing. Preparing? What you did today? Yes. You asked me why I didn't try to escape, now you should know why. He lied without changing his expression. If someone put his hand on his chest, he would find that his heart didn't even beat too fast. Ling Kongzi was silent for a while. Then he said, "So you are going to help me? But everything you have done before will be in vain. Can you let it go?" Ling Kongzi thought he knew what Li Yunxin was talking about. But Li Yunxin didn't know what Ling Kongzi was talking about. He had too many secrets. Any one of them would probably match Ling Kongzi's words. So he used his trump card. Ling Kongzi, this woman, used a magic weapon to cover her face. Most people who did this had a strong sense of self-protection. This kind of mentality would never be formed in a happy environment. According to his experience, people who were like this after adulthood either suffered from long-term domestic violence when they were young, or came from a single-parent family and lacked a sense of security. Most of these people also liked to suppress their desires and see curiosity as a scourge. But this kind of human nature could only be suppressed, but it was absolutely difficult to eradicate. Once it was provoked at the right time, it would erupt more strongly than ordinary people. He had seen too many people like this in his previous life. They usually looked aloof and indifferent, but often for a person or something, they would show perseverance and endless enthusiasm that ordinary people couldn't achieve. In view of these two encounters, he had formed an image of this fairy Ling Kong in his heart. He sighed and slightly raised his head. His eyes looked sad and blurred, but there was a kind of pure and clear persistent emotion. He opened his mouth slightly. His lips, which had become redder from the alcohol, were trembling slightly. Then he leaned forward slightly and took a deep breath after a short, well-timed gaze. His breath trembled a little. It seemed that he was suppressing some strong emotion, which made his voice tremble slightly. But this trembling made him look even more affectionate, and his words also seemed to come from the bottom of his heart. "For you, I can give up the whole world." After a second of silence, Ling Kongzi leaned back slightly, raised his hand and pointed at Li Yunxin's throat. His voice became a little sharp because of his excitement, and he sounded like a junior high school girl whose braid had just been pulled. "What are you talking about?" The reactions of the others were actually not much better than hers. Most of them were in a slightly dazed state. What the hell? On such a stormy night, the head disciple of the Langya cave master had encountered a powerful enemy of unknown identity that he had been searching for all this time. In the end, he actually confessed to her? What kind of play was this? Lu Laodao was dumbfounded. He had thought of 100 ways that Brother Xian might have used, but he had never thought that he would actually do this. She pressed against Li Yunxin's throat. But his face did not show any panic. He just stared straight at Ling Kongzi's face. After 3 seconds he suddenly laughed bitterly, turned his face away and shook his head. "Just take it as I was talking nonsense. This kind of thing. In fact, I don't believe it myself." He turned his face slightly and looked at Ling Kongzi sadly, but he had already avoided her fingers. "Do you know the first time I saw you? When I first saw you, I couldn't tell if you were good-looking or not. I also didn't know what kind of character you had. I was doing something bad, but you caught me doing it. I was so disgusted with you. Where did this hateful woman come from, coming to my house in broad daylight? What are you trying to do?" Ling Kongzi's heart slightly sank. She did not know why she was disappointed, but she was somewhat disappointed. To hell with it. Then she heard Li Yunxin say, "But later I told you about communism. I thought about it alone for many years and came up with it. Others would not have the patience to listen to me. But you, only you, all these years the only one who listened to me. I think you probably don't understand my feelings at that time. For many, many years. After many, many years there was suddenly a person who made me feel, so this person really exists. This person really can understand what I'm thinking, really is the person I've been looking for in my heart." He sighed slightly, reaching out his hand to the perverted eating picture on the table and gently stroked it. As he said those passionate words, Ling Kongzi's eyes flickered and she did not want to look at his eyes. At that moment he seemingly subconsciously made some noise on the table. Naturally, Ling Kongzi came to look at the picture. Looking at the picture, she was slightly stunned for a moment. It was at this moment that Li Yunxin was completely sure of one thing. So he finally smiled and said softly, "Actually, I am very lonely." This sentence was like a curse. After saying this, Ling Kongzi's hand trembled slightly and she finally put it down. She suddenly experienced the first confession in her life, and it happened in such an era and such an occasion. Even as a cultivator, her heart was in chaos. Then, after listening to Li Yunxin's words, hearing those words from a person she did not hate, her heart was suddenly lost and then slightly relieved. She had long lost her calm and calm mood. It was in this state that he was guided until he heard the last sentence. So her body slightly straightened but soon relaxed again. She panted slightly twice and finally said in a low voice, "I understand." At this time, everyone was dumbfounded. Because no matter what, they could not figure out what had happened. Why did it become like this? But in Li Yunxin's heart there was already a sneer. This woman was in his hands. He had already grasped something important in her heart. At this moment he had already become her demon. Her demon in her heart. She was a young woman full of repressed curiosity. Even as a transcendent state cultivator, she was still filled with a strong sense of vigilance when she came to the mortal world. After seeing the pervert eating picture, the first question she asked was whether the art saint was still in this world. At that time, although Li Yunxin could not see her expression, if he could not hear the strong feelings this young girl had for the art saint from her voice and tone, he would really be a deaf person. A soft-hearted but slightly paranoid girl fell in love with a legendary figure. This feeling was destined to not be told to others. Today she met a young man who seemed to be equally interesting. First she was confessed to, and then she heard the same story from the young man's words. If it was an ordinary person, she could force herself to grit her teeth and ignore it. But if it was an ordinary person, why would he have feelings for the art saint? So she was moved by her own sense of identity and the same sense of loneliness. She felt that she had met her own kind, in a sense the same kind. From the moment this matter had happened, the outcome was already decided. This girl who was full of romantic self-destruction, Ling Kongzi, had developed a strong sense of sympathy and identity for Li Yunxin. For a young girl who had not experienced the world, under the guidance of a demon like Li Yunxin, it was difficult for her to realize who and why the complicated and turbulent feelings in her heart were at this moment. And it was even easier to mistake these feelings of sympathy and identity for love. So, on this rainy night, this fairy Ling Kongzi, she had just passed the tribulation of killing, and now she was in the tribulation of love. So Li Yunxin smiled and said, "I also hope that you will understand." "Then why did you come here?" Ling Kongzi, whose heart had already been thrown into disarray, did not even give it a second thought before he answered. Even though his voice sounded like it had already regained its calmness, and he had once again straightened his back. "What I understand are those ideals that you spoke of. It's not something else. You are an interesting person." After that day I carefully thought about what you said. So I know that what you said before should not be false. The theory of communism. If you made it up on the spot to deceive me, you could not have said it so carefully. In my opinion, if you thought about these things by yourself, you probably could not have come up with it without 5 or 6 years. So I understand and believe you on this point. So now, what are you going to do? I want to get rid of that dragon son. What are you going to do? In fact, everything that Li Yunxin had built tonight was built on a foundation. He had told Ling Kongzi about his ideal. Although the so-called transvestite communism was just a nonsense he had made up to deceive her when he first met her. But no matter how this theory was criticized, despised, or pursued at that time, after all, it was also a person who had spent decades of effort to come up with it. Just because a smart person like Ling Kongzi could see this point, she took it for granted that Li Yunxin had really spent so much time and effort on this idea. Based on such a premise and foundation, the following words, the words of despair and disappointment, would make him believe Li Yunxin's frustration and desolation even more. Just like what he said, if one day he found out that the path of immortality he had been cultivating was nothing, what kind of pain would it be? She no longer doubted, or rather, she no longer doubted. Finally she said her purpose. To get rid of Dragon Sun. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned in his heart. This woman wanted to get rid of the 9th young master. So this was her other purpose. Damn it. If he had known this, he would not have spent so much effort on her. Wasn't it to provoke her to fight with that demon, so that he could benefit from it and escape unscathed? But this kind of surprise was better than nothing. He smiled. You should know what I would do. The big demon I mentioned just now was referring to him. He and I used to be friends. Li Yunqing smiled bitterly. I used to try to do what I wanted to do through him. But gradually I realized that he was not a good candidate. He killed 2 swordsmen of the Lingshu sword sect in Huainanzi. I wanted to live in seclusion in the city of Wei, but he killed Li Yaoxi. Hearing this, the magistrate and the other 3 prefectural magistrates all opened their eyes wide. This matter was related to them. His temperament was too surly. Many times he would suddenly become a beast. Even as a friend, he didn't recognize him. Li Yunqing shook his head slightly, seeming to be distressed. I had planned to use the jade slip of enlightenment to do something more meaningful. But he knew it and took it away. At this point I had to break up with him. That's why you saw what I did in the Qiao family. I wanted to start with those small demons. I thought that since the big demons were brutal, I should get rid of them. Many of those small demons were doing good things. There are so many temple attendants in this building, and most of the people in the temples are worshipping those demons. The jade slip of enlightenment is really in your hands. Ling Kongzi was a little stunned and sighed in a low voice. It's not in my hands now. You shouldn't have touched it. Alas. Ling Kongzi still shook his head. She thought for a while and said in a low voice, after I get rid of Long Sun, you go back to the mountain with me. Li Yunqing thought for a while and took a risk to ask a question. Why do you want that jade slip? I mean, how important is that thing? Ling Kongzi was silent for a while. She slowly raised her hand and hung it in the air. She wrote the word lost and quiet stroke by stroke. Then she flicked her finger. The 2 words flashed in the void for a short moment like lightning and then disappeared. The next moment, everyone except the 2 of them was silent, as if they had lost their minds in an instant. She let out a sigh of relief and looked at Li Yunqing. She said word by word, the 2 sages haven't ascended yet. It's because they are waiting for it. They are waiting for someone to open it. Chapter 89. After Ling Kongzi said this, Li Yunqing knew that he could not return to the mountain with her. If it was an ordinary treasure, it would be fine. But since the 2 sages were waiting for something related to their ascension, he was not sure what the others would do. But he knew that if it were him, he would not allow the person who knew this secret to live freely in this world. It was not necessary to kill him, but it was something related to ascension. Waited for 1,000 years? Or 2,000 years? The art saint was here 2,000 years ago, and only 1,000 years ago. It's been 1,000 years. No one has been able to open that jade slip after such a long time? Li Yunqing frowned slightly. The art sect existed for 1,000 years, right? The art saint didn't have a successor? Since you've seen the jade slip, you should know what the words inside are like. Ling Kongzi was silent for a while. Her voice suddenly became steady. Of course, someone has seen the jade slip and read the words inside. But the meaning of the words in the jade slip is very deep and obscure. The words themselves are simple talismans used by the ancient sages. Some of us are proficient in these words, but we need more people to work together to study it. So we need you too. It's not a bad thing to go with me. Oh, I see. Li Yunqing raised his hand and rubbed his forehead. He seemed to have a slight headache because of the alcohol and excitement. But in fact, the hairs on his body were already standing on end. He raised his hand to conceal the subtle fluctuations on his face that could be detected by the other party. As if he had suddenly seen a ferocious beast or a venomous snake that was about to pounce on him, a chill suddenly erupted from his bones and instantly spread throughout his body. That sentence just now was not right. Ling Kongzi's current state was not right either. She seemed to have suddenly become a different person. He could not read her tone. If it could be said that Ling Kongzi had been penetrated by him and his entire inner world was exposed in front of him, then at the moment when they talked about the jade slip of illumination, it was as if an alarm in her heart had been triggered. Her subconscious was instantly armed by some powerful force, forming an unbreakable mental defense. Someone or something in the past had given her an extremely strong psychological suggestion. This strong psychological suggestion established an alarm mechanism in her heart. Once something or someone triggered this alarm, she would become abnormally calm and steady. In that instant, she broke free from Li Yunxin's control over her. However, under such circumstances, Ling Kongzi didn't seem to know. She herself didn't seem to know that the alarm in her subconscious mind had been triggered. She said, "Since you've seen the jade scroll, you should know what the words inside are like." Li Yunxin had seen it before. Therefore, he knew that the words inside were words that everyone in this world could understand. She also said, "Of course, some people have seen it, but they couldn't read it. If someone had seen it, it was impossible that they couldn't read it." What he could see in his current state were some cultivation methods, written in the words of this world. And the art saint set some restrictions on that thing through some kind of spell that only existed in this world. So he needed to advance to a higher level before he could see some other things. But as far as he knew, there was absolutely no problem of not being able to read it. This meant that neither she nor the someone she mentioned had really opened the jade slip of illumination and read the contents inside. She told a lie that was easy to see through, but once it succeeded, it was a very effective lie. This was because she or they probably believed that no one could know the words that were opened on the jade slip of illumination. So she could make up some nonsense about simple talismans used by ancient sages. Since many masters like Dao Tong and the Grotto Heaven had not seen it, then Li Yunxin should not have seen it either. Li Yunxin should not be able to open the jade slip of illumination. Then Ling Kongzi was deliberately and casually hinting to him, "Of course we know how to open this thing. And we have even read it. Whether you can open it or not, whether you can read it or not, we can. And now we are very happy to accept you as one of us." If it was any other person in this world, they would probably have been tricked. This woman's thinking level right now was simply gone on a rampage. Li Yunxin gently took 2 deep breaths, allowing herself to return to a rational and sharp state. In this Baohua gathering, he had done many things and laid many traps. Now he was trying to find a way to get out of this dangerous situation as soon as possible so that he could have a chance to make a long-term plan. After 2 seconds, he put down his hand and raised his head again. He smiled and said, "Okay, I will go with you. In fact, I have already made this plan." He looked at the people in the hall who did not look, hear or move, and pointed at Lu Laodao beside him. "I did so many things today, first for you and second for him. It's the same with this painting. I think I should show some of my value. Not only am I the owner of the jade slip, but I am also a powerful Daoist painter. Dao Tong and Kenzo need people like me. I am not a pawn that can be sacrificed. But if I leave this Laodao, I have been with him for so long, I like him." Li Yunxin was silent for a while. "You know that I have reached the transcendent state. I need to find my Daoist heart and I need to go through the tribulation. I'm not sure if this Laodao is my Daoist heart or the tribulation. Since someone's Daoist heart is a frog, of course, it is possible that my Daoist heart is a person. If he can become my Daoist heart, then nothing must happen to him. If he is my tribulation, then nothing must happen to him. If he dies as a tribulation, the tribulation will be even harder to go through. That is why I am doing all these things today, and I will show mercy to these unruly Daoists in the future. I want him to live a better life after I leave. My friend, the 9th young master, has seen this Laodao before, and I am afraid that he will harm him. So, from this point of view, I also want to get rid of that dragon son." Ling Kongzi seemed to be smiling. "Then why don't you take him with you? The Grotto Heaven is the paradise in their hearts. You know what kind of people you, me, and the high-level cultivators are. Mortals say that cultivators are immortals, but to be honest, after going through so many tribulations, we will feel closer to the demons. He will not like that kind of environment. I don't like being kept in captivity, and he won't like it either. Besides, there is no Qianghua Tower or Munanju there. In fact, this is a siege. The people outside the city want to come in. Once you walk in, you can't control your body and you can't even think about walking out." Ling Kongzi seemed to be satisfied with his answer. There was a smile in his voice. "It is always interesting to hear you talk. Then tell me, the ghost you want me to catch. Why did you catch him?" Chapter 90. Dragon's son is looking for him. Li Yunxin looked at Pei Juzi. He didn't know when Ling Kongzi had noticed that something was off with this painter from the capital, but he knew that the possessed painter was already being controlled. Pei Juzi sat upright behind the table, but his eyes showed some panic. He couldn't move. "Dragon's son and I. Well, I call him the ninth young master. After the ninth young master and I returned to the city of Wei, he disappeared. During that time something happened near the city of Wei. I thought it was him, but later I thought it was not his method. Some time ago I walked around the city and asked some people. Some people's relatives lived in the suburbs and a cow died in their family. After asking about the cause of death, I knew it was not the ninth young master. The ninth young master eats people, but this thing eats souls. At that time I already had this idea, so I started to investigate the ninth young master. From the annals of the Dragon King Temple, I guessed that he was the ninth son of the dragon, Chiwen. Now you also said that he was the dragon son, so I guessed right. From the annals of the temple, I found that as long as there was a record of abnormal precipitation, there would be people missing. The ninth young master loved to eat people and he was the dragon's son. So I guessed he was the temple's Wei River Dragon King. If he was the Wei River Dragon King, this area would be his territory. I thought he should be a family man. According to his appetite, he only ate about 10 people every year near the city of Wei, which was already very restrained. So now someone was making trouble in his territory. Although it was eating the souls of cows, he couldn't bear it. But later I found out that not only cows, but also many poultry died like that. But as for cows, one cow could change a farmer's life's luck. It was a big animal, so everyone talked about cows. So I guessed that the ninth young master was looking for this thing. Damn it. Just now when he came in, the world was raging. He, on the other hand, kept looking up at the sky. I could see he was a little pleased with himself. Because the ninth young master should be looking for him in the sky above the city of Wei. But I'm curious. To be able to prevent a great fiendish demon like the ninth young master from finding it, yet we are able to restrain it. But just now I didn't feel any Inchi at all. So, who the hell are you? He had already turned to that Pei Juezi, and asked sincerely and curiously. Ling Kongzi flicked his finger as if he was undoing some kind of restriction. Thus this Pei Juezi spoke in a human voice. Why have you bound me? As expected, you can speak human language. Li Yunxin praised from the bottom of his heart. I thought he didn't know how to speak human language when he was so quiet and only the manager spoke. It seems to be a 100-year-old ghost. Ling Kongzi said, it's normal for it to learn human language. They were originally human beings, but after becoming ghosts, they were lucky enough to wander around the world of the living, so they became silly. But if they stay in the world of the living for a long time, they will slowly learn human language. Look at this one, it has at least 200 years of cultivation. But I don't really understand this. In that case, if a ghost lives for a long time, isn't it no different from a human being? Then it will be stronger. Look, it can even use magic. Li Yunxin asked for advice and Ling Kongzi answered him. Only this ghost stared at him and kept asking, why have you bound me? At this moment, it showed its difference from a human. Ghosts are, after all, nether spirits. Ling Kongzi answered patiently, the spirit and the body are originally one and inseparable. When the body dies, there will be a ghost. The reason why it is called a ghost instead of a spirit is that the body is the hall of the soul. When the body dies, the spirit will definitely be damaged. Without the hall of worship, it will become a ghost. So a ghost is actually a damaged spirit. Since it is damaged, it can't be repaired. So no matter what, it will always be different from other people. For example, a ghost will always have an obsession. Some things were actually parts of its body that it had lost and it was difficult to remember them. Could only remember them clearly if they were made up. Listen to this ghost. Is there anyone who still speaks like this? Previously, Li Yunxin only felt that this big ghost's words were strange. Now that he heard Ling Kongzi's words, he realized that it was indeed different from other people. Different from the people of the current era. In Li Yunxin's eyes, the Daqing state was an ancient society with a strict hierarchy, but the atmosphere was actually more open-minded. For example, a girl like Yin Shuero, who came from a relatively well-off family, could show her face on the streets every day, and people didn't find it inappropriate. As for etiquette and speech compared to the previous dynasty, it was much more vulgar. For example, Lu Laodao didn't really understand the rules of today's Baohua gathering. Although it was called an ancient etiquette, it was actually a secular etiquette that ordinary people in the previous dynasty would follow. As for speech, in the previous dynasty, regardless of gender, everyone addressed him as Lord. The people of the Daqing state mocked the previous dynasty for being pedantic, saying that when two people argued and swore, They still addressed each other as Lord is a ruffian, which was quite funny. Looking at this big ghost now, he addressed him as Lord. I need this ghost. Li Yunxin said, it's not suitable here, I have to bring it back. The ninth young master is looking for it, maybe it knows something about the ninth young master. No matter what, he used to be my friend. Even if I have to deal with him, I want to be the one to do it. So I want to know more about him. He looked at Ling Kongzi and repeated, I need this ghost. I hope you can help me. When this is over and I get the jade scroll, I will go back to the mountain with you. Ling Kongzi seemed a little hesitant. Just now, Li Yunxin led the topic to the big ghost, and asked her some topics that could effectively make her relax. At this moment, her guard was down again, and the hints that Li Yunxin implanted in her heart gradually gained the upper hand. She tapped the back of her hand twice with her slender fingers and suddenly asked, you can make a treasure like the freak-eating painting, which means that your cultivation is about to reach the peak of the transcendent state. I know that Daoist Danqing is not good at fighting. But I feel that something is wrong with your breath. Because I fought with 2 swordsmen from the Lingshu sword sect. At that time I didn't have much contact with people from the Daotong and Kenzo sections. The 2 Daoists had powerful talismans on them and they sealed my ocean of chi and mountain of snow. Until today I can only use a little nature essence. You are right, Li Yunxin said honestly, but why would 2 swordsmen from 2 sects come to my house to look for me, and they are only at the emptiness realm? They said that a Lao Dao said that I have the 10,000 miles of mountains and river painting in my house, and they came for the painting. I believe the words of those 2 idiots, but I don't believe that the person who guided them to me was really for the painting. It was probably just an excuse. According to the 2 swordsmen, the person was on the verge of death and that's why they found me. So I want to know who is that person. He told the truth about his situation, knowing that it would put Ling Kongzi at ease. This was what the other party wanted to know. He also knew that the other party would have doubts. In that case, I'll listen to you for now. I'm not afraid of any tricks from you. As long as I bring you up the mountain, everything will no longer be a problem. With this mentality, the other party knew that he was not an idiot. If the other party was confident that she had absolute power to control the final outcome, and if she had a good impression of him, she should not mind some of his little tricks. And she should also know that he was a difficult opponent. As expected, after he said this, Ling Kongzi thought for a while and said, oh, I see. I can't tell you about that person for now. As for the things you want to know about this ghost, it's up to you. If you want me to help, just tell me. But as for the time, I hope it won't take more than half a month. I've been out for a long time, it's time to go back to the mountain. Ling Kongzi thought for a moment and said, you're an interesting person and a smart person as well. But there's one thing. I'd better make it clear. I am a Taoist at the peak of the transcendent state. Previously, the 2 swordsmen of a lower realm could seal your ocean of chi with a talisman. You should know that the Daotong cultivators have some tricks in the fight. So if I want, within 10 miles of the city of Wei no one can live. I hope you can make the right decision. Chapter 91. Li Yunxin raised her head without the slightest hesitation and gave a sincere smile. Hey, I won't do anything stupid. Ling Kongzi looked at him for a while and felt that other than some sort of fanaticism in his eyes, he didn't notice any other abnormalities. Thus, he let out a low sigh and lightly tapped his finger on the table. An invisible force undid the inhibition she put on everyone. However, for these people, the conversation between the 2 masters only lasted for a short moment. They were ready to listen a moment ago, but in the next moment, they were already sitting opposite each other in silence. There was a final clap of thunder outside the window. Then the rain stopped and the wind stopped. Even the slowest people realized that they were just used by the Immortals. But they didn't know what happened between the 2 Immortals. Fairy Ling Kong stood up and said, this person is no longer a human. She pointed at Pei Juezi. A ghost with 100 years of cultivation has possessed his body. Pei Juezi's soul has been devoured. Then she turned to Li Yunxin. This is a Taoist friend of my Langya cave. There were some misunderstandings before, but they have been cleared up. This ghost will be taken care of by him from now on. But if the steward of the Qin's mansion has any objections, you can ask me. The steward beside Pei Juezi was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that his master had become a possessed ghost. He subconsciously waved his hands. I don't dare, I don't dare. He didn't have the courage and qualification to ask Fairy Ling Kong. This person. What's your name? She looked at Lu Laodao again. I'm Hunyuanzi. Oh, this Taoist Hunyuanzi is a friend of my Langya cave. He will live in the city of Wei in the future. But don't underestimate him. The ones who had the authority to agree on this matter were the magistrate and the 3 prefectural magistrates. The 3 of them nodded and agreed. They only hoped to end this Baohua gathering as soon as possible and get away from this woman. But what she said next made their hearts tighten. It finally came. In that case, I said before that I was going to face the killing tribulation, and I have already done so. Ling Kongzi took 2 steps and said unhurriedly, many of you know Punnenzi Ling Su Sword Sex Punnenzi. Some people knew that he had returned to the mountain gate, but in fact he hadn't. I killed that person. The hall instantly became silent and no one made a sound. As for why I killed him, you should know. You secular people don't think there's anything wrong with killing and eating poultry. But if a domestic fowl kills its own kind and then gives it to you to eat, I think it will not be happy. Among our Daotong and Kenzo there are many who were born in the secular world. When the celestial beings passed down the Tao ancestors' heavenly heart dharma, they also said that they had to pity the people of the world and protect the people of the world. Therefore the first commandment of the Daotong Kenzo is to not take the lives of mortals unjustly. Some scum colluded with the people of the secular world and used their mortal lives to transcend the tribulation. If I see such people, I will kill them. And the few of you here should know what Punnenzi did. I think you even helped him. Fairy, we have our difficulties. Seeing that things had reached this point, the magistrate no longer cared about his face and cried out in grief. The magistrate's cry made the 3 magistrates kneel on the ground and kowtow. Xianxing's situation was even worse. He was originally sitting with his eyes fixed on the ground, but now his body softened and he collapsed. Difficulties? Then tell me. The magistrate was startled and hurriedly said, Fairy, please understand. Although the Ling Su sword sect is not a big sect in your eyes, in the eyes of the secular world, it is a real celestial sect. Our Daqing state also has a law that says that when celestial sects do things in the secular world, local officials have no right to interfere. This is the rule on the surface, but when it comes to the local areas they can only be more cautious. The celestial masters are aloof and their temperaments are different from us mortals. If they have a request, who dares to disobey? You are saying that the Ling Su sword sect forced you to do this. The magistrate was startled for a moment and sweat appeared on his forehead. As a 4th-level official, how could he not know the meaning behind these words? He might be involved in the internal strife of the celestial sections. Oh, you think you are involved in the internal strife of the celestial sects? But at this moment, Ling Kongzi actually said what the magistrate was thinking. The magistrate was even more startled. If it wasn't so, then what was the reason? Was it really just because the Ling Su sword sect killed the secular people? Fairy Ling Kong killed her fellow cultivators. However, Ling Kongzi only smiled coldly and ignored him. He pointed at the 4 officials and the 3 painters. The 7 of you surrender in 3 days. You, as the magistrate, will interrogate them and then interrogate yourselves. Since you are secular people, you will be dealt with according to the laws of the Qin kingdom. If you dare to be biased, I will deal with you according to the rules of the celestial sections. After saying these few words, the rain outside the building had actually stopped. Ling Kongzi stood in the middle of the field and slightly raised his head to look at the sky for a while. He then said to Li Yunxin, in 3 days I will go see you. The scroll. It was drawn for you, so it is yours. Okay. She took a step and walked out of the building with just 1 step. Thus, everyone was looking at him. Li Yunxin stood up from behind the table and stretched his arms a few times. As soon as he turned his head around, he saw that the prefectural magistrate as well as the painters were still staring at him. He made a fuss and called out, Aya, if I were you, I would run to the yamen right now and work hard, study hard and live hard. Viz. Do you know how she kills people when she is angry? Have you seen sticky and thick rice spilled all over the ground? If you replace that thing with a bloody paste. Okay, don't look at me like that. I definitely won't plead for you and I won't think of a solution for you, much less help you. Because right now, I am in a hurry to do something else. To talk to these fellow cultivators about something serious. To be reasonable, in fact I am more difficult to deal with than that Ling Kongzi. I will not be lenient in killing people. Get lost. I haven't even eaten yet. After a quarter of an hour, only Li Yunxin and those wild Taoists were left on the second floor of the Qianghua building. They had originally ordered delicious food, but now all of them were served. But it was not a table but a table for 8 people, just like the wedding ceremony of the Daqing state. There were many people like Lu Laodao who had been hungry all day and only hoped for this meal, but at this moment, they were not in the mood to eat the food. Since they realized that Li Yunxin probably had an extraordinary identity, they were guessing why he asked them to stay. When all the dishes were served, Li Yunxin stood up and smiled. I know you are all hungry, so I will make it short. Chapter 92. All of you are temple attendant and temple master. You must have worshipped a god. But I don't need to tell you, most of them are not real gods and whether they have Reiki. Look, the situation of the religious circles around the city of Wei is that your family worships the Dragon King, my family worships the Old Lord, and his family worships the Mountain God. The people of Wang Village are used to worshipping the Mountain God, and the people of Niujia Village like to worship the Dragon King. In fact, they are all asking for the same thing. But when the people of Wang Village went to Niujia Village, they accidentally sprained their ankle and wanted to pray for a speedy recovery. Oh, is this the Dragon King in your family? What if the Mountain God doesn't like it? This will cause a loss, right? So, my friends, it is necessary for us to change to a more professional way of management. What do you mean by more professional? It means to use the same brand and expand the scale. All the religious circles around the city of Wei should unite and worship one god. In this way you are the same god in Wang Village and the same god in Niujia Village. Both families will benefit and the future will be wonderful. Go on. The only person who dared to interrupt him at this time was Shirkuizi. She was sitting at the same table with Lu Laodao and they had a private conversation just now. She didn't know what Lu Daoist said to her to make her feel at ease. Now when everyone was listening to Li Yunxin with a lot to say, she asked a question. Yunxinzi, fellow Taoist. She stood up and made a Taoist salute seriously. I can understand a little bit of what you said. But, most of our temples and Taoist temples have been around for a long time. After a long time, maybe several generations of people around here are worshipping the same temple. Even according to what you said, if we change the god's position, the nearby believers. This is indeed a problem. Li Yunxin pressed her hand down. After thinking for a while, he sighed. But my friends, think about another problem. There are immortals in the world. 2 saints after all. Not to mention the 2 sages, even the profound realm and true realm Qi warriors are more powerful than these mountain spirits. And then there's Black Bai Yanjun. He's a real deity. Why don't you worship them? Because it's useless. Li Yunxin spread his hands and tilted his head. Worshipping the twin sages? It's not like the twin sages will run over to help them find the lost chicken. By Yanjun, your life will still be taken. That's why people who are too aloof and unapproachable will have this problem. Then you can go and worship those mountain spirits and wild monsters. Although they might not grant you everything you ask of them, they will occasionally do something for you. That will make you popular. So in fact, we simple and lovely villagers are very sincere pragmatists. Of course, I can understand. Who has the energy to talk about philosophy when they don't even have enough to eat? So, you don't have to worry that they won't worship just because they changed their deity position. Even if you change it to a gun-era black demon immortal and say that it's not a temple but a demon immortal castle, as long as they come in they will feel comfortable. Occasionally they will hear someone say that the black demon immortal's spirit has manifested. After a long time, when you want them to worship, they will obediently do as you say. Cough. Fellow Daoist Yunxinzi, this black demon immortal. Don't mind these details. It's the primordial deity. It's not surprising that you haven't heard of it. Li Yunxin said quickly. So, I already have a pilot unit here. Fellow Daoist Yun Yuanzi's Dragon King Temple. It was originally a statue of the Dragon King of the Wei River, but we replaced it with a statue of Crown Prince Zhouan and a statue of a dragon lady. On the first day, the response from the villagers was very good. Right? How much did we earn last month? It's not even a month yet. But as of now, the revenue from incense offerings is 3 taels of silver. It's the previous 2 months. Lu Laodao answered obediently. Li Yunxin spread his hands. So my friends, look, we've gained both fame and fortune. I know what you're worried about. But the deity position that I personally painted for you is indeed filled with spiritual energy. Not only is it filled with spiritual energy, it also calms the heart. Once our Wei City's religious community reaches a consensus to worship these two deities, will change from extensive production to intensive production. Isn't that great? The wild Daoists looked at each other, but no one spoke first. In fact, they all knew Li Yunxin's means. The paintings that he made should be fought over crazily. But now, he seemed to have some grudges with that Ling Kong fairy. Although this Daoist Yunxinzi looked young and promising, and also had a strong background. But since it was a fight between two tigers, they, as nobodies, didn't have the guts to get involved. Li Yunxin sighed. Think about it, my friends, I'm a reasonable person. I'm also thinking for the sake of our Wei City's religious community. Seeing that his tone had softened, a Daoist said tentatively, Fellow Daoist. Alas, in fact, we're already flattering you by calling you fellow Daoist. But to tell you the truth, your current situation. Alas, we're thinking that this matter isn't urgent. We'll wait until the matter between you and Ling Kong is settled. When he said this, many people finally showed a look of agreement. I see. Li Yunxin lowered his head and rubbed his hands, but quickly raised them again with a smile on his face. Then I can understand. For example, maybe we've pissed off Fairy Ling Kong by using his stuff, because high-level cultivators are temperamental in the first place, right? The Daoist nodded hurriedly. Yes, that's right. But the problem is, I'm also a high-level cultivator in the transcendent state, my friends. He spread his hands helplessly. I'm standing here and I'm telling you with a smile, come and join us. You say sorry, buddy, but your future is uncertain and we don't want to. I also feel embarrassed. Aren't you afraid that I'm temperamental? He said this with a smile and then no one said anything else. The lobby suddenly became cold. Ling Kongzi didn't smile and people couldn't see her expression, so the mystery in her heart increased. But the first impression of Li Yunxin was the strongest. At first he was the Daoist boy of Lu Laodao and he was gentle and polite. But now, they could still see his expression, hear his tone, and his temperament was like a normal person. Compared to the cultivators of the intent realm and the emptiness realm, he was more like a normal person. Therefore, the reverence they had for him was reduced by a lot because of his witty words just now. At that time when Li Yunxin said these words, they would wake up as if waking up from a dream and realize. But maybe, he also had a temper. So at this time they saw Li Yunxin put away his smile and draw something in the air with his finger. The body of Pei Juzi, who had been bound and sitting in the corner of the hall and unable to move, was like a sack that had been emptied, softly deflating. A gust of black gas struggled and roared in the air as it was pulled out from the 7 orifices of the body, and then it was put into Li Yunxin's sleeve. He didn't move during the whole process and only stared at everyone present with his eyes. That voice, they all heard it. It was extremely sad. A chill slowly crept up everyone's spine. That's why I have a temper too. For example, I was angry just now, but you are the old man's friend, so I vented my anger on him. I pulled the ghost out of the skin. This experience is almost the same as skinning. Li Yunxin was silent for a while and then a smile appeared on his face again. So now, do we have a consensus? What I mean is, to replace those things that you've been offering. No one said anything. Li Yunxin raised his wine cup and said happily, Good. Then friends, let's toast to our friendship. After a few breaths of silence, the wild Daoists finally raised their wine cups. Chapter 93. They drank a cup of wine and then put it down in silence. Li Yunxin looked at them and sighed sadly. All right. You guys are not happy here. Then I'll go. Old Lu, keep them company. I'm going home. After he finished speaking, he turned around and slowly walked down the stairs. After he left for a quarter of an hour, the wild Taoists looked at each other. They couldn't believe it was over. Lu Laodao smiled awkwardly. In fact, Brother Exon is a very kind person. Because of this, they continued to look at each other. It was already nightfall. Although the rain had stopped, it was still around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. In his previous world, this was the best time to indulge in pleasure. But in the city of Wei, it was the right time to be sound asleep. Therefore, the blue stone street that had been washed by the storm was shining under the moonlight, but there was no one around. The green trees and flowers on both sides of the street emitted a rich and fresh fragrance because of the water vapor. He stood on the street and took a deep breath. He felt that he was soaked in the sweet smell. It made him feel comfortable. Comfortable and painful. In fact, since the first day he hung the portrait in the temple, he had never experienced the feeling of no pain. The pain tormented him at every moment, causing his mood to worsen. Li Yunxin knew that this slow and irresistible change would eventually bring more problems. For example, the previous arrangement was not very delicate. The pain affected his thinking. But fortunately, both Lu Ling and the ninth young master had obvious weaknesses, and he could play with their emotions and minds. But he couldn't expect everyone he met to be like this. Lu Ling was already an exception. A cultivator at the peak of the transcendent state should not have such an obvious personality flaw, but she did. He could only understand that a genius must have a flaw, and a perfect person could not exist. So he needed to solve this problem. Playing with his mind couldn't solve everything. At least for people like the two sages who could step into the state of Tai Shang Wang Qing at any time, they wouldn't give him a chance to break their mental defense. What's more, he also realized that there was someone who had forcefully interfered with Lu Ling's mind. Perhaps it was something else, or perhaps it was a person. If it was a person, it was a very frightening person, as dangerous as he was. He had to make himself truly strong. At the very least, he had reached the peak of the transcendent state and passed the delusion tribulation. This tribulation had obviously affected him. His spiritual power had become quite unstable and his thoughts had become more impulsive. He paced on the wet street, pondering and experiencing the pain he felt when he injected the power of faith into his snow mountain and ocean of qi. He slowly walked through an alley and saw that most of the houses had already turned off their lights. Occasionally, there were a few households that did not turn off their lights. If one listened carefully, one could hear the sound of people reading. He even saw a shop that had just closed for the day, and the shop assistant was installing the door planks. When she saw him, she paused for a moment and then smiled at him. He smiled at the waiter and asked, "Do you have anything to eat?" His appearance and temperament were infectious. For some reason, the waiter had a good impression of him. He thought for a moment and said, "Yes, but they're all cold now." Li Yunxin tossed a piece of silver to the waiter and said, "Don't worry about it." The waiter happily took it, thanked Chen Fan and went into the shop. After a while he came out with 2 wheel paper bags. In one bag were 2 corn pancakes and in the other bag were some coleslaw and some shredded chicken. Li Yunxin took them and put the coleslaw and the chicken in the pancake. He took a bite and thought it tasted good. He had eaten at noon and it was about 9 o'clock now. He was already starving. The waiter looked at him and asked curiously, "What are you eating?" "Hamburgers." Li Yunxin said, "I don't think you don't have Rujiamo here. Haven't you seen it before?" "No, I haven't." "All right." He smiled and walked forward. The waiter said behind him, "The steward of the Lu family just came to buy some stuff. He should still be on his way. You might run into him." Li Yunxin paused for a second and turned around to ask, "Huh?" The waiter looked at him, blinked and pointed ahead. "Aren't you a Taoist priest from the Lu family?" Li Yunxin turned around and looked in the direction he was pointing. After thinking for a while, he understood. He smiled and thanked him, then turned around and continued walking. The place the waiter was pointing to should be the Lu family. There were lights in that direction. Judging from the brightness, it should be a big house with candles. Listening carefully, there was music. Of course, it was morning music. Someone had died in that house. He was wearing a Taoist robe and walking alone on the street at this time. The waiter probably thought he was a Taoist priest performing religious rites in the Lu family. The custom of the Qing kingdom was to fast at night when a family held a funeral. The waiter probably thought he couldn't take it anymore, so he kindly reminded him that the steward of the Lu family might be up ahead, so he didn't want to be seen stealing food. Li Yunxin pondered for a moment. In the end, she felt that a dead person was inauspicious, so she decided to take a detour. There was a big locust tree in front of him. The locust flowers had bloomed, and their fragrance was intoxicating. It had rained earlier and a lot of the locust flowers had fallen. Now that they were steamed, the smell was even stronger. To the left of the locust tree was another fork. Li Yunxin walked to the side of the locust tree and stopped. Then he made a sound of surprise and stared at the locust tree. Someone, or something that looked like a person, he walked out of the tree trunk. He first poked his head out and a scarlet tongue hung from the side of his mouth. Then his 2 hands reached out and grabbed the tree trunk. With a push his body came out as well. Finally he stepped out and stood still. Li Yunxin looked for a while and laughed involuntarily. It is said that locust trees are mean and unlucky. So that's what it is. You came out from here. Mr. Bai, this is the second time we meet. The person who came out was Bai Yanjun. Bai Yanjun, whose face was as white as his clothes, heard these words and immediately widened his eyes. He stared straight at Li Yunxin. If I guessed correctly, the two of you must have a division of labor. You are in charge of taking in the good guys and the Black King of Hell is in charge of taking in the bad guys, Li Yunxin said with a smile. The person who died in the Lu family is not bad, right? That's why you are here. Bai Yanjun still stared at him and did not speak. When Li Yunxin finished speaking, he said in a shrill voice, "You can see me?" Li Yunxin frowned. Is this strange? Or can I only see you in my dreams? I'm not dreaming, am I? Bai Yanjun did not speak anymore. He walked over slowly and reached out his hand to Li Yunxin. His hand was also pale, but his fingernails looked neat. Li Yunxin did not dodge. At first he found it interesting when he saw the King of Hell come out from the old locust tree that was said to be unlucky. Then he remembered what the two had said previously and decided to take this opportunity to ask again. Was he surprised or not? Was he afraid? Who would not be afraid when seeing this thing that had always existed in legends? But Li Yunxin knew how to be an interesting person. It was as if he could see this Bai Yanjun as if he was looking at a ghost. It was quite an amazing thing. And now, this Bai Yanjun also wanted to see what was happening. It did not seem to be malicious. Chapter 94. Therefore Li Yunxin did not hide. Being cautious was a good thing. But if he was so cautious that he did not take any risks, it would be called cowardice. Bai Yanjun's hand, it pierced into Li Yunxin's body without any hindrance. He wanted to dodge immediately, but he forced himself to stand there. Because he had an inexplicable favorable impression of Black Bai Yanjun. Most of the time, inexplicable favorable impression and sixth sense were actually the effects of the subconscious. They were not groundless. For example, when a person went out alone, he inexplicably felt that something good would happen that day. Therefore, when he arrived at the company and was notified of his promotion, he would think, "Oh my God, sixth sense. I have good luck somehow." But in fact, before this he might have already known that there would be a personnel change in the company, or a boss might have praised him, or a colleague who was proficient in insider information might have shown goodwill to him. His subjective consciousness did not summarize these things, but at the subconscious level he had connected these clues. Therefore, when he went out, he had already expected this result. People called it sixth sense. Li Yunxin did not know why he had a favorable impression of Bai Yanjun and why he trusted him. But he knew that such a subtle but obvious favorable impression should be the result of subconscious analysis that he was not aware of. His premonition had always been accurate, so he let the hand penetrate his body. He felt a burst of heat. But it only lasted for a moment, and Bai Yanjun withdrew his hand and screamed, "You little brat, do you know that you don't have long to live?" If someone else said this, Li Yunxin would only smile faintly. But now, the Yama King who was in charge of life and death said, Li Yunxin immediately frowned. "What do you mean?" Bai Yanjun stared at him, a pair of pure black eyes like two bottomless pits. In a moment of desperation he stuck out his tongue to make himself speak more fluently. "You little brat, you really don't know the pros and cons. How do you think you can see me? Although I don't know where your soul came from, you reincarnated into a human body. Since you are a human body, why don't you cultivate the spiritual power of heaven? Now you are being worshipped by the masses. How can the power of faith be obtained by a human like you? Your snow mountain and ocean of qi are already riddled with holes. You're not far from death." Li Yunxin's expression changed slightly. He composed himself and said, "I do know about this matter. But what if I slowly replace the spiritual power in my body with the power of will and reconstruct my snow mountain and ocean of qi? In the future I won't practice the heavenly heart technique anymore. I'll switch to practicing the divine path. Is that not allowed?" "Tsuke, you are really a newborn calf. You think no one has thought of this before." Bai Yanjun's voice became sharper and sharper. "It's possible. However, a human body could not use the power of hope. Your ocean of qi and mountain of snow is like a house with stone walls, and the power of vow is like scattered sand. Now that your house is sealed, you can slowly exchange the loose sand for the stone. This big house won't collapse in a short time. You can also use your spiritual power to undo some of the seals. But in the future, when you receive a lot of the power of wishes, how can scattered sand support a big house? You are not a spiritual monster or a mythical beast. Did no one teach you this common sense of cultivation? Li Yunqing was speechless. He stood quietly under the tree and thought for a while. Then he sighed helplessly. No one taught me. They are all fucking professors. Who would teach me that 1 + 1 = 2? Then what if I don't absorb the power of hope now? Your foundation has been destroyed by yourself. It will be like this for the rest of your life. F***ck. Li Yunqing touched his forehead. This is 2F** King Big. Then, do you have any ideas? You are experienced and knowledgeable. Can you give me some advice? Bai Yanjun stared at him and sized him up again. Tisdese. You little kid. It's fine if you are not afraid of me, but you still want to take advantage of me. There is a way. Li Yunqing smiled in her heart and finally heaved a sigh of relief. It was blackmail by Yanjun. He was not some random monster who controlled the life and death of the whole world. How could such an existence have the time to care about someone's life and death? If Bai Yanjun said so much because he saw him out of curiosity, it would be as funny as the president of his era who saw a man who was owed his salary and followed him to ask for it. Because we have met before. Li Yunqing was in a better mood. Last time you didn't accept the souls that died because of me. You also mentioned a senior. After these days I think, that senior. Is he the art saint? After he finished speaking he took another bite of the cake. Bai Yanjun gasped. You little kid, you still have the mood to eat cakes. How dare you? Li Yunqing spread his hands. What else can I do? Isn't it all up to you to decide? In fact, I am quite curious. What happened to the previous one? Why didn't you accept me? Doesn't this mean that even if I accidentally die, I don't have to be afraid? Heh. Bai Yanjun sneered. If you die, even if I don't accept you, you will still be a wild ghost that has lost your mind. What's the use? Oh. Li Yunqing thought for a moment. All right. Fine, then I am unlucky. After saying this, he continued to walk forward with the biscuit in his hand. After 3 or 4 steps, he heard Bai Yanjun shout, You little kid, aren't you afraid of death? Everyone has to die. It may be as heavy as Mount Tai, or as light as a goose feather. Li Yunqing said vaguely while chewing, I just accepted a big ghost today. It has cultivated for hundreds of years and I feel that it is living a good life. Since there is no other way. If I die you won't accept me. Then I will muddle along for hundreds of years and become a ghost king. At that time if I show my face, everyone will be afraid of me. Won't I be able to cultivate godhood and receive the power of wishes? What's there to be afraid of? The White Hell Lord, who was busy every day, would not tell him so much for no reason. Li Yunqing knew that he must have something to ask of him. This request seemed to have a condition that must be fulfilled, and that was, he must not die. This Bai Yanjun was a little silly. If he was the one doing this, the other party would definitely be filled with gratitude and at the same time make a lot of promises. But not like now. In a flash, the White Hell Lord had blocked his path. This confirmed Li Yunqing's guess. The first time they met, Black Bai Yanjun said that he would not accept his soul, nor the souls of the people around him. He was afraid that the devil who killed the Sin Luo temple would cause more trouble. And Li Yunqing knew that to Black Bai Yanjun, the only difference between him and everyone else in this world was, his situation was very similar to that art saint. If that was the case, the devil they were talking about was most likely art saint. That senior was awesome. He actually brought him to the netherworld. Li Yunqing stopped in his tracks. Huh. You are a scheming kid. Bai Yanjun said angrily, but don't think that I don't have a way to deal with you. It's just that I don't want to be distracted recently, and I don't want to trouble myself, so I won't bother with you. I know this. Li Yunqing said, so, since you stopped me again, do you have any ideas? Chapter 95. Bai Yanjun let out an inexplicable sharp laugh as if it had found a way to vent its anger. I have a way. It squinted at Li Yunqing. Do you dare to die? Li Yunqing's expression remained the same. And then I won't take your soul. You can take over my body. It sounds like a trap. Li Yunqing said calmly, I know several situations of taking over a body. But the most optimistic one is Xiao Jessen. Her body becomes an immortal skin, but she also loses the 5 senses of a human. Not to mention rebuilding the snow mountain and ocean of Qi. Bai Yanjun laughed again, its voice full of malice. Why be a human? You can accept being a ghost, but can't you accept being a big animal? Li Yunxin sighed. Grandpa, I know I was wrong. Let's talk nicely. What's the matter? Bai Yanjun laughed again. You are indeed a big animal. Think about Dragon Son, his real body is as big as a hill. Isn't it a big animal? You. Li Yunxin frowned slightly. Take over Dragon Son's body? I can only take over the bodies of those things. Bai Yanjun touched its tongue. Those so-called divine beasts, Humph, Dragon, Golden Winged Dapeng, Dragon Son, or Kirin. In my eyes they are just big animals. You should know that they are originally. When it said this, it seemed to feel that it had said something wrong, so it hurriedly stopped talking. Li Yunxin keenly noticed that this Bai Yanjun, the master of life and death of all things in the world, when it mentioned those divine beasts that it called big animals, its mood was not right. It was probably the kind of hee you just have some stinky money, what's the big deal? Now your husband still has a mistress. A slightly sour taste. If it experienced this, it didn't seem to be a bad choice. But why? Li Yunxin asked humbly. What's the difference between snatching their bodies and snatching a monkey's? Where are they? Bai Yanjun smiled disdainfully. Everything in the world has a spirit. They were humans after all. Their bodies and souls were one. Without either they would be incomplete and would suffer damage. Because of this, after seizing someone's body, they will lose their 5 senses and only have an empty body. As for those beasts that have yet to develop intelligence, how can they possibly contain such a delicate thing like a human soul? But Li Yunxin frowned. That dragon, Qilin and Rock, weren't they originally beasts as well? What do you know? This could not be said. I don't want to tell you either. Bai Yanjun rubbed his tongue impatiently. You only need to know that when a person dies, only his shell remains. But when those big animals die, they have to leave an empty space. Leave an empty space? Li Yunxin couldn't understand what he meant. What empty space? Yamajun was unhappy again. He frowned. You're such a troublemaker. Death is empty. If other things in this world are dead, they're dead. But this big animal died. Although its body is gone, there's still an empty space. It needs your soul to make up for the empty space. Hey, you'll know when the time comes. Hearing what it said, Li Yunxin pondered for a moment, and understood. He didn't know whether this Bai Yanjun didn't want to say it like that, or this world didn't have such a saying. Li Yunxin felt that the empty space in its mouth, if he replaced it with a word he could understand, was actually godhood. This so-called big animal seemed to be hiding a secret. Thinking of this, he felt more at ease. He respectfully saluted this Bai Yanjun. Junshang, please continue to teach me how to do it. So you're so useful to me, then I'll immediately kneel to you. Transformation seemed to make Bai Yanjun a little surprised. But after a moment of astonishment, she let out a shrill laugh. You little brat, you're really a wonderful person. You're really similar to the Devil King. Then I'll teach you. Listen carefully, I'll only say it once. If something happens to you at that time, even I won't be able to save you. He spoke quickly and his voice was sharp. But Li Yunxin was smart and remembered it after only one time. But after remembering it, he deliberately asked a few more questions. That Yamajun seemed to be impatient and only used words like, think about it yourself, to dismiss him. Seeing that he couldn't get any more information, Li Yunxin flicked his sleeves and asked the ghost in the sleeve. Unexpectedly, this Bai Yanjun also knew about it. It waved its hand. Why do you make things difficult for this thing? This thing is more than 200 years old. It has been in the city of Wei for more than 460 years. It usually doesn't do evil. Although it devours souls, it only devours the souls of birds and beasts. It never hurts people. You said it killed livestock a few days ago? That's because it ate all the big birds and beasts near the city of Wei, so it went to devour livestock. You said that dragon son wants it? That dragon son is like a beast living here. He only thinks that the city of Wei is his nest, such a century-old ghost devouring birds and beasts. Of course he wants it. But this thing has some ability. It has been hiding for 300 or 400 years, and the two of them play around like this every few days. Interesting. Why don't I keep this big ghost? This monarch, can't I find some fun? It's fun, so I keep it for fun. Li Yunxin slightly raised his eyebrows. This Yama Jun seems to be saying something insincerely. But he didn't ask more and only said, but recently it killed people. Bai Yanjun rolled his eyes. In more than 400 years there will always be some deaths. My lord seems to be hiding something. Li Yunxin also knew the inclination of its attitude. Then the last question. Since this big ghost was captured by Dragon's Son in the city of Wei, and ate all the birds and beasts nearby, why didn't it leave? Why are you so noisy? Bai Yanjun raised his eyebrows. Li Yunxin could hear that it was really impatient. Why do you care about it? When you have enough fun, just let it go. Don't harm it. After saying this, it seemed to be afraid that Li Yunxin would not let it go and disappeared in a flash. Only Li Yunxin was left standing at the entrance of the alley. After standing for a while, he slowly walked 2 steps to the wall. Then he slowly leaned his back against the wall and raised his head. Just like that, he silently looked at the sky for a very long time. The night sky above him had just gone through the baptism of wind and rain. There were no dark clouds and the galaxy was shining. Li Yunxin looked at the almost colorful Milky Way, the familiar Big Dipper and the silver plate-like moon and let out a long sigh. The night sky of this world was almost the same as that of his previous world. Was almost, because at dawn every day he could not see the morning star. Never. At dusk he could not see the Chang'e star. Never. The morning star and the Chang'e star were Venus. This was a world where everything was very familiar, but there was always a trace of strangeness in the details. He wanted to take over. Fuck you. Li Yunxin exhaled again, pushed his palm against the wall and bounced up. He straightened his back and continued to stride forward. Chapter 96. When Lu Laodao returned home, he saw Brother Exen staring blankly at a bronze mirror. A bronze mirror was a rare item for Lu Laodao. As a man, he didn't need to dress up, so he naturally didn't need such an item. Moreover, it was a bronze mirror. The one Brother Exen was looking at wasn't the size of a palm, but the size of a pot. Such a large item must be worth a fortune. Laodao had now learned to pay attention to small details like Brother Exen, and he noticed that there was some fine white powder in the engraving of the bronze mirror. He immediately knew that it wasn't new, and there was no place to buy it at this time. It's so late and Brother Exen has borrowed this bronze mirror from some girl. Brother Exen. Laodao had drunk a little tonight, but he had restrained himself, so he was only a little more excited than usual. But he had just seen Brother Exen stir up a lot of trouble, and he was also hiding something in his heart. Thus he became a little quiet. After watching him for a while, he picked up a stool by the door and sat down. He glanced at Li Yunxin from time to time as he picked up the fur balls on his sleeves. After picking up the sleeves, he picked up the ones on his collar. But Li Yunxin just stared blankly at the mirror, ignoring him. Laodao sighed in his heart, feeling a little sleepy, so he quietly got up and planned to return to his room. That was when he suddenly heard Li Yunxin mutter as if to himself, "Am I very handsome?" Laodao was stunned for a moment, but he understood what handsome meant. Just like how Brother Exen usually said so cool and so handsome, he knew that it meant he was expressing his approval. So he said, "Yes. Brother Exen is very handsome." Li Yunxin sighed faintly. "Yes. I think so too. That's why a handsome, humorous, understanding and promising young man like me can't die young. I'm only 14, can I use the word die?" How could Brother Exen say that? Like most people in this era, Lu Laodao hurriedly spat a few times. "How can you say that?" Li Yunxin only smiled and looked at himself in the bronze mirror. After pondering for a while, Laodao sat down again and said in a low voice, "Brother Exen, Laodao, I don't have much ability. You've been taking care of me these days. Laodao, I don't know what you said to the fairy from the Langya Grotto heaven and what your plans are. But if it's something bad, Brother Exen, don't worry. Will we be able to overcome this tribulation?" Li Yunxin didn't answer him immediately. Instead, he was silent for a while before he suddenly asked, "Old Lu, say for example you are a temple attendant. Now a person comes to ask you how to do carpentry. He asks you how to use wood to make a big bird that can fly in the sky. But you tell him about it and you even give him a detailed plan on how to saw the wood, how to make the mechanism and how to put it together. What does this mean?" Whenever Li Yunxin spoke, Lu Laodao had always been very attentive. Although he didn't know what this question entailed, he felt that he could help Brother Xian with the details. As he began to ponder. After thinking carefully for a while, he tried to speak. Logically speaking, I'm a temple attendant. How would I know anything about carpentry, let alone mechanisms? But if I tell you everything, then this method is definitely not what I want. Perhaps someone told me about this method, or perhaps I've seen someone do it before. Brother Xian, is this right? Of course it is. Li Yunxin looked at himself in the copper mirror and muttered to himself, it's the leader of hell. How would it have the leisure to study that? The spiritual energy in the painting is so clear that it's almost as though it's a grandmaster. But when I ask it a few more basic questions, it can't answer any of them. It'd be a miracle if it was the one who came up with this method. He stared at himself for a while longer and then suddenly smiled. It was a genuine smile, almost as though all of his previous melancholy had been swept away, and he had finally figured out the crux of the matter. Awesome. He stood up from the mirror and stretched lazily. No wonder the twin sages are so awesome. But I've never heard of them causing such a ruckus in the Azura temple. So, is this the reason why that person is so excited? Men really have to be more ruthless with themselves. Lu Laodao didn't know what Li Yunxin had figured out to make him so happy. That said, he always liked this side of Li Yunxin. He was always confident, as though he could solve any problem. Thus he also felt that his mood had improved. Now that he was in a better mood, he tried to ask about something else. Brother Xian, there's something else. It's about my fellow Daoists. Them. I know what you want to ask. Li Yunxin paced around the room briskly, and his tone became cheerful again. You're such a good person. Are you really afraid that they'll get into trouble because of my paintings? You people still have to learn one more thing. The painting is the most rugged and the Sangtai is the one who takes the clothes. He waved his hand strangely. I'm here as an expert to impart some experience to you. The example might be a little inappropriate, but it's not crude at all. For example, you old Lu. You had a dispute with Qiao Duanhong of the Qiao clan, and there's a grudge between you and them. Let's first exclude the fact that you're a pervert or a mental patient and just say that you're a normal person. Would you go and find the stray dogs one by one just because Qiao Duanhong fed them by the roadside and beat them all to death? Lu Laodao opened his mouth as if he wanted to say that he wouldn't, but he couldn't open his mouth. Li Yunxin spread out his hands. Like I said, the example is inappropriate. I'm not scolding you. Besides, heaven and earth are heartless and treat all living things as straw dogs. There's actually no difference between humans and dogs. I'm just saying, can you understand what I'm saying? Yes. Lu Laodao nodded. Then where are they? Have they gone back to their own homes? They found an inn in the city and booked it. Lu Laodao sighed. They're all waiting for you, Brother Xian. Look at you sighing again. Do you think I'm too overbearing? Sigh. Li Yunxin laughed and walked out of the door with his hands behind his back. The moonlight in the courtyard was like water, and the shadows of the bamboos were dancing. He opened his hands. Look, what a beautiful scene. I could have lived a leisurely and carefree life in this small villa, but there are so many idiots who make me restless. That ninth young master must be crazy. He said I'm interesting and wanted to visit me often. Who the F***ck wants to see me? That Ling Kongzi is a madman as well. He also said I'm interesting and wanted to bring me back to the mountain. I'm F***king scared of being cut into pieces. There's also a retard. Let's not talk about him. He doesn't look like a good person. Oh, actually, he's not a human. You see, I'm just a place of the outer fringe. A fortress. I could have gone anywhere in the world. But because of my poor background they all came looking for me. Now I'm hiding, but I'm still being found. It's because they're awesome. Daotong Kenzo, they're amazing. I'm weak and powerless. That's why I'm not happy now. If I'm not happy, people will die. Li Yunxin turned around and looked at Lu Laodao. Just watch. In a few days these idiots, all of them will die. Not a single one will be left alive. Chapter 97. His oath made Lu Laodao speechless. The old man looked at him standing in the moonlight, and a strange feeling rose in his heart. Brother Xian's situation was not right at all. He did not doubt that this mysterious master, named Li Yunxin, could do what he said. Li Yunxin had given him enough surprises. But he felt that Li Yunxin's words were too tragic and resolute. So much so that Lao Dao felt a little worried. He always felt that a person like Brother Xian would not stay by his side forever. One day when the wind and clouds gather, he will transform into a dragon and leave, he sighed in his heart. He spent the night like this. The next day when the sky turned white, Lu Laodao looked into Li Yunxin's room. Brother Xian seemed to have stayed up all night, drawing. He knew that Li Yunxin did not give him the paintings of the temples out of kindness. He must have his own plans. But after thinking about it for a night he felt that what Li Yunxin said was right. Even if he had his own plans it was still a good thing for the temples. The paintings of the prince and the dragon lady were still there in the front yard, and there were still people coming to worship them. They all said that it had the effect of calming the mind, and some people even offered 100 taels of silver for it. Brother Xian was in the transcendent state. Lu Laodao could not help but exclaim. He had heard of Taoist priests and swordsmen in the transcendent state, but who had ever heard of a painter in the transcendent state? After a while, Li Yunxin pushed the door open and walked out with a roll of paper under his arm. Lao Dao also hurried out. Brother Xian, what are you doing today? He always felt that he was involved in a big event. This made him very nervous and worried, but he also felt a sense of excitement that he had not felt for many years. Li Yunxin handed him a roll of paper. It's all here. 37 copies. You go and divide it up for them and frame it for offering when you get home. You know what they do. Just tell him that I'll go for a checkup in a few days. Forget it. If he wasn't an idiot he would know what to do upon seeing this painting. Well, when you're done tell them to hurry back. I'm going out for a stroll. When Lu Laodao heard this he suddenly felt his hands become heavy. Those were the 37 idols. Nearly 4,000 taels of silver. He immediately felt a little unsteady on his feet. However, he still stopped him. Brother Xian, what are your plans? Do you want to tell me? Lao Dao, I'm afraid that I'll ruin your plans. Li Yunxin smiled and seemed to want to say something, but in the end he only recited 2 lines of a poem. I don't know the true face of Mount Lu, only because I am in this mountain. Have you heard of this poem? When Lao Dao heard this he only felt that it was good. But he couldn't understand the meaning of it. He could only shake his head. Brother Xian, your poem. It's not my poem, it's a poem I copied. He patted Lu Laodao's arm hard and pointed at the paintings. Settle this matter. Please. Although he said it casually, Lu Laodao could hear the seriousness in his words. He nodded seriously. Don't worry. The two went out together. Lao Dao went to the inn where the Taoists were temporarily staying, while Li Yunxin went out of the city. He put a simple talisman on himself so that he walked like a gust of wind, fast, but not so fast that it would attract attention. It took him an hour to get out of the city of Wei. He estimated that it was only 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Once out of the city the scenery was totally different. Looking to the east, there was a mountain range that stretched like a dragon, and looking to the west there was a vast expanse of flat land. A smooth official road went straight to the north. If you followed this official road, you would eventually arrive at the capital of the kingdom of Qing Jinghua. But Li Yunxin traveled with some ox carts, horse carriages and hawkers carrying vegetables for a while, and then turned into another road. Although this road was not as orderly as the official road, there was a row of lush trees on both sides. Behind the trees was an irrigation ditch and then large tracts of fertile land. There were few people on this road, except for a peasant woman who held a basket of goose eggs tightly in her arms. She vigilantly watched him for a while and then turned into another small road. So he was left alone and walked for another hour. The trees on both sides gradually thinned, and the field of vision gradually widened. There was a slight smell of water in the air, and there was no longer only the sound of birds and insects, but more background sounds. After walking for a while he could finally hear the sound of rushing water. At the end of the road was a ferry. There were 2 or 3 small boats moored there. Seeing Li Yunxin coming from afar, one of the boatmen asked in a loud voice if he wanted to cross the river. Li Yunxin looked and shook his head. So they went back to chatting, ignoring him. He got off the road and walked along the river. There were thick reeds growing by the river and there was no river bank. He didn't know how deep the Wei River was, but it was very wide. There should have been a dock on the other side of the ferry, but even with Li Yunxin's eyesight he couldn't see it clearly. It was hidden in the mist. If he said it was a big river, even if he said it was a big lake, people would still believe it. Li Yunxin was a little absent-minded by the wide water surface. She also saw many huge whirlpools on the surface of the water and the waves brought by the rapid water flow. Who knew how many monsters were hiding under the water surface? He took a few more steps and walked up to a small hill covered with green grass by the river. He stood there and looked at it carefully for a while. As far as he knew, the Qin kingdom was landlocked. There were many dynasties in this world. The Qin kingdom wasn't the largest, but it wasn't the smallest either. Since the Qin kingdom was landlocked, then this part wouldn't be the estuary of the Wei River, but the middle reaches. If the middle reaches of a big river could have such a scene, who knew how majestic the lower reaches of the Wei River would be? The sound of water surged in his ears and his body was covered in mist. Looking at the water and sky merging into one with no end in sight, he let out a long breath after a while. No wonder. There were people who wanted to fight for the world. When sitting in the study, the word world was only a broad concept. You could imagine mountains and rivers, but in your imagination, you were like a giant looking down on them. They were shrunk in your consciousness. But now, seeing this scene with his own eyes, just seeing this river made him feel majestic. This entire world must be majestic and extraordinary. Adding this thought, this Wei River will be mine. I will soon become the master of this vast and majestic Wei River, the Wei River Dragon King. Li Yunxin held his breath and stared at the extremely wide surface of the water for a quarter of an hour before finally exhaling. It seems that thinking like this makes me feel much better. Right. My friend, it's time for us to meet. So he took out a piece of paper from his sleeve. With a flick of his finger, the paper turned to ash. The shadow of the 9th young master appeared out of thin air, standing where he was and staring straight at him. Li Yunxin patiently looked at him for a while, and the shadow gradually blurred and disappeared. He sat down on the carpet-like grass, and amidst the sound of the wind and waves, he softly hummed a song. The grassland that witnessed the death of the gods is a field of wild flowers. Far away, the wind is farther away. Chapter 98. Li Yunxin finished humming a song, but the 9th young master hadn't arrived yet. He stood up and used another portrait. Just like before, this portrait contained bits of the 9th young master's aura. In fact, if the 9th young master worshipped this portrait, he would also absorb the power of faith. After using the second portrait, he sat down again and continued to hum. Just like this time, all the way until noon. He used 9 of them in total. The sun moved to the top of his head. The sky was blue and beautiful without a single cloud. The sunlight steamed the leaves and grass, and his cotton robe was also dry and warm. Beads of sweat even began to seep out of his body. But he didn't try to stretch his body. Instead, he wrapped himself up. After a quarter of an hour, his brow began to perspire. He had not had anything to drink or eat for the whole night and the whole morning, so he looked a little disheveled at the moment. He rubbed his eyes and took out the 10th portrait. After the green light of this portrait dissipated, Li Yunxin heard footsteps behind him. And a familiar voice. "Why are you so anxious to call me? Are you in a hurry to die?" It wasn't a friendly tone. It seemed that the person who spoke was quite unhappy. But Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, and a smile appeared on his face. Then he suddenly turned around. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared, replaced by a panicked and anxious expression. "9th young master, something bad has happened." But seeing his expression, the 9th young master's originally hostile face slightly froze. After a moment, a cruel and strange smile appeared, and a row of sharp teeth appeared. "Then tell me, why is something bad, ah?" When he said this, the teeth in his mouth slowly grew longer. By the time he uttered the word, "ah," in a long rhetorical tone, his grin had almost reached his ears and the white teeth in his mouth had already turned into fangs. Such a mouthful of teeth appeared on the body of a handsome man, and under the bright sun, it was strange and terrifying. His demeanor and tone made it seem as if he was filled with anger and was about to denounce Li Yunxin, but found that Li Yunxin's reaction was completely unexpected. Therefore his anger was held back because of this abnormality, but he held it in for the time being, and in a most dangerous manner he intended to listen to what the man before him had to say. Once there was a disagreement, it would explode out twice as fast. Li Yunxin wiped his sweat and didn't care about his attitude. He quickly pointed at the Wei River and said, "You should leave now." There was no time to explain. Someone wants your life. I've been waiting here to talk to you about this. I thought you couldn't come. I have plenty of time. The ninth young master's eyes gradually turned pale yellow. His pupils became thinner and thinner. Li Yunxin knew that this was a sign of extreme anger. But he still didn't care. If you treat me as a friend, then hurry up and leave. Do you know that I don't have long to live? Do you want me to die for nothing? He took a deep breath and said before the ninth young master's pupils turned into thin lines, I've asked someone to change all your god positions around the city of Wei. Although I don't know if it's effective or not, but she's found out. As soon as he said this, it was as if time had stopped and the gears were stuck. The ninth young master's extremely angry expression froze on his face. Then his eyes suddenly softened and he became a normal person again. What? You asked someone to do this? You did this on purpose? Li Yunxin blinked his eyes in surprise. You know about this? The ninth young master didn't say anything. His eyes rolled around in his eye sockets. After a while he said gloomily, Then tell me, why did you do this? I know your way, River Dragon King. Li Yunxin shouted excitedly. That day when he came to find me, I thought about it and felt that there must be a reason. I checked the temple records and the breath in the Sanhika Dragon King temple. Then I knew that your way, River Dragon King. The god position in Lu Laodao's temple was yours. In order to break the seal on my body, I changed your god position for mine so that I could enjoy the power of incense and wish. Then I knew. Li Yunxin clenched his teeth and looked straight at the ninth young master, as if he was trying hard to suppress his emotions. Then I knew this. You really treat me as a friend. As soon as he said this, the ninth young master's handsome face leaned back slightly, but soon leaned forward again. It was as if the strong and turbulent emotions expressed by Li Yunxin were like violent waves, shocking and unbearable to him. But in a flash he realized. That was the emotion he had been longing for. The sense of security of being cared for without any cost, exchange or sacrifice. The ninth young master was Qi Wen, the ninth son of the dragon. Last night Li Yunxin asked the big ghost in detail. The big ghost had been alive for more than 460 years. And it had been hiding with the ninth young master for so long. In the city of Wei, it was the one who knew Dragon Sun best. In the Qianghua building, Li Yunxin knew that the ninth young master was looking for the big ghost, so he asked Lu Ling to help him get it. He only thought that since the ninth young master was looking for him, he might have something that his good friend valued. Maybe he could make use of it. But what he learned from the big ghost last night was far beyond his imagination. Although the big ghost was not as logical and clear-minded as ordinary people, it was different from the departed soul like Qiao Jessen. Li Yunxin only asked him for 2 hours and he understood a lot of things. The ninth young master. He was not favored. There was a Shinryu in this world. There was only one Shinryu. This Shinryu was a mythical beast that ruled the world of water creatures and even demons. It was almost equivalent to the emperor of the demon world. But the emperor of Shinryu was not bestowed by anyone. It got it by itself. It was said that when the Shinryu was born, there were many powerful demons in the world, but they were all subdued by the Shinryu. Then the nobles of the demon world surrendered to the dragon, which gave it supreme authority. Since the world was peaceful, the Shinryu went into hiding. After hiding, it was bestowed with 9 sons. They were Qianyo, Hatred, Chaofeng, Paleo, Lao Basya, His Majesty Fu Wu and Qiwen. These 9 sons were in charge of 70% of the water in the world. Although this kind of control was not absolute, it was more like a lord in name. But no matter what, the world was huge. According to Li Yunxin's estimation, the territory of the Daqing state was about 1/3 of the country he was in before. But this kind of territory was only a medium empire among the many dynasties. To the north of the Qing kingdom, across the Yi kingdom, was the super ruler of the known world, Li. The territory of the Li kingdom was about 10 times the size of the Qing kingdom. And the emperor of the Li kingdom called himself the Sky Emperor. Chapter 99. In such a big world there were many rivers. 70% of the water belonged to Juzi Qiwen. There was only one Wei River and it was only in name. After leaving the Qing kingdom, the river basin was not something he could control. The big ghost didn't know why it was like this, but it was not important. Li Yunxin already knew why the 9th young master was like this. The 9th young master was like this. The jealousy, the loneliness, the moodiness, and the strong desire to be recognized were all there was in him. This was practically a textbook example of a patient with serious chronic psychological trauma because of childhood, family, and difficulties he encountered when he was young. Thus, after Li Yunxin said this, the ninth young master's anger immediately disappeared. Li Yunxin breathed a second sigh of relief in his heart. Although demons didn't have much humanity, they were still intelligent and logical creatures. Even if their logic was different from that of humans and had its own system, it was still considered logic. And it was still in his hand. The banished Long Sun, after hearing Li Yunxin's words, stood by the surging Wei River, as if trying hard to make himself look more ferocious. In the end, he was confused by the things that suddenly filled his heart. After a few breaths, he finally said fiercely, "If so, why did you do this?" At this moment, Li Yunxin no longer looked panicked. He straightened his body, took a deep breath, and said word by word, "Ninth young master, have you heard of this story?" The king of Tianfang Kingdom had a guest named Pianli. This retainer had served 3 countries in succession, but all of them had been destroyed. Therefore Pianli came to Tianfang Kingdom. Later Tianfang Kingdom was also destroyed. The guest ran away as usual. After a few years, the king of Yitan Kingdom, who destroyed Tianfang Kingdom and killed the king, was assassinated when he was crossing a bridge. But he was safe and the assassin was caught. The king of Yitan Kingdom asked him why he wanted to assassinate him. This assassin said that he was the retainer of the former Tianfang Kingdom's monarch, Bianli. During these years he cut his face with a knife and disfigured his face. He swallowed the hot coal again to destroy his voice. After waiting for so long, I finally got this chance. Li Yunxin paused and wiped the sweat off his face, giving him time to think. The expression on Dragon Sun's face had become quite complicated. This was the first time that Li Yunxin had seen him show such emotions that were similar to those of a normal human being. He frowned and asked, "Why didn't you escape this time?" This piece says that when he was serving the monarchs all treated him as a servant. But when he followed the king of Tianfang Kingdom, the king treated him as a kingdom scholar. Therefore, Li Yunxin straightened his body, his expression solemn and dignified. Amidst the rushing waves of the Wei River, he said, "Your Majesty treats me as a scholar of the state, and I repay you as a scholar of the state. You saved me once in that temple. You saved me again in Qinghe County. To you it was as easy as lifting a finger. But to me it was the grace of a new life. Previously I didn't know the trick and used the power of faith to break the seal. I had already broken the taboo of cultivation and could no longer advance. Since that's the case, I will repay you with my life. That woman knew that I was your friend, so she threatened me and asked me to help her kill you. How can I be an ungrateful person? I told that woman that you are the Wei River Dragon King and enjoy the power of faith. Once you get rid of all the temples that worship you, you will lose the faith of many believers and your strength will be greatly reduced. At that time we can kill you." That woman didn't believe me. I naturally have a way to make her believe. Li Yunxin smiled sadly. To replace the statue of a god with a portrait, I need some spiritual energy. Only then will the temple attendant and the temple master feel that it is a real god and willingly change it. So I told her, if she doesn't believe me, I will be the one who is worshipped. I am a human. If I receive the power of faith, I will die. I don't even want my own life. Naturally, she believed me. Li Yunxin shook his head. She asked me why I did that. I said that when I was with you, I had killed a lot of people. If your death is related to me, I will have no face to live in this world. After saying this, Li Yunxin started to take deep breaths. His chest was moving up and down violently. It seemed that his emotions were surging and he couldn't calm down for a long time. The ninth young master stood in front of him and listened to him in a daze. After listening to him, he was stunned for a few seconds and suddenly became furious. He waved his hand and hit Li Yunxin a few feet away. His face suddenly became ferocious and he shouted angrily, "Idiot! Idiot! Idiot! I found you interesting in vain. I am the Wei River Dragon King. The Wei River Dragon King. How dare you act like this? Idiot! What an idiot!" He was like a child, jumping in anger on the spot, but he didn't attack Li Yunxin anymore. After he shouted for a quarter of an hour, he suddenly fell to the ground and looked at Li Yunxin, who had sat up from the grass. He stared at him for a while and suddenly sighed. Man, why didn't you tell me earlier? The power of that angry strike was very strong. However, Li Yunqin was wearing the soft armor that he gave him, so he only felt a little sweetness in his throat. Looking at his furious look, he knew that he was expressing his feelings. He didn't know how long the dragons lived, and he also didn't know how long the demons could live before they could be considered as adults. But looking at the ninth young master, he knew he was still a child. At least mentally, he was still a child. He didn't know how to express his feelings, and he didn't know how to control his feelings. He was happy because he got his first real friendship, but this happiness soon turned into depression because of the bad news. Li Yunqin didn't even need to use much strength. He had completely controlled his emotions. Looking at him like this, even Li Yunqin suddenly felt a little pity in his heart. This dragon son, at least at this moment, really treated him as a friend? Because he couldn't bear it, he even started to think maybe he could change to another method. However, when the ninth young master said the next sentence, this little bit of soft feelings and fantasy completely disappeared in Li Yunqin's heart. Why didn't you tell me earlier? The ninth young master's voice had slowly calmed down. I found the place where you released the ghost. You released the ghost, didn't you? Humph. I've been looking for it. In the end, it was still found by this young master. That ghost said you borrowed the bronze mirror from that family. Humph. I was angry at you at that time. I saw the girl's skin was soft and tender, so I grabbed her and ate her. Now I know what happened. Humph. The ninth young master frowned. I wouldn't have eaten it if I had known. Actually, the taste wasn't that good. But she's just a human after all. He seemed to be a little ashamed. But this little bit of shame quickly disappeared like the dew under the scorching sun. Sigh. Since it's like this, you have to die, huh? I have no other way. Pity you, sigh. Then tell me, what did you say to that woman? Li Yunqin's expression didn't change at all. Even his eyelids didn't tremble. He looked at the ninth young master calmly. The woman you mentioned, is she from the Yin family? A young girl. Called Yin Shuero? Maybe. The ninth young master frowned as if he had more patience because of Li Yunqin's sacrifice. Who has the patience to remember her name? She's just a blood sacrifice. If you like it, I'll sacrifice a few more for you after you die. Li Yunqin smiled slightly. He lowered his head, remained silent for a while, and then spoke again. But his voice had become clear and organized. So it's like this. I told that woman I'll pretend to be your friend and stand on your side. When you two fight, I'll take advantage of you and put a talisman to seal your cultivation temporarily. At that time, you'll be at my mercy. But at that time, Li Yunqin enunciated clearly, his eyes clear and cold, staring straight at Long Sun in front of him, I'll use this talisman on her. The ninth young master frowned slightly and thought for a while. He looked at Li Yunqin again, his eyes rolling. Then he tilted his head slightly. It's that simple? No matter what kind of strategy, the simpler and more effective it is, the better. Li Yunqin looked at him and answered, if there are too many links and variables in a strategy, it's easy to go wrong and lose the game. So it's really that simple. I'll decide the winner. The ninth young master thought for a while and suddenly showed a troubled expression. That woman. Did you say she's a Daoist? A Daoist in the transcendent state. She said, she's here to kill Long Sun. Humph. If I happen to be busy that day, you have nowhere to go, my friend. Li Yunqin interrupted him and for the first time said in a tough and serious tone, you have nowhere to hide, my friend. This way, river. Isn't it yours? Where else can it be? The ninth young master suddenly opened his eyes wide. How dare you talk to me like this? But Li Yunqin only sighed. I'm a dying man. His words made Long Sun calm down again. He frowned angrily, paced a few steps and said angrily, I'm Wei River Dragon King. As soon as he finished speaking, a cloud rose from the ground and rolled him into the river. Li Yunqin turned around and stared at the direction where he entered the river for a while. Then he raised his head, faced the sun, closed his eyes and let out a long breath from his nostrils. Demons, I just caught them and ate them. Such a simple sentence was uttered in such a simple manner. Li Yunqin knew that if she had any soft thoughts, she would be seeking her own death. Maybe one day this sentence would come true for him. Being friends with an orange didn't mean that he wouldn't eat oranges. When eating oranges, did he need to think about the feelings of the orange? He sighed again, stuck another talisman on himself and walked towards the city. This matter was over. The ninth young master wanted to hide, but he knew he couldn't. Without Wei River, what was he? He could only accept the challenge. Lu Ling would probably be curious about what he did outside the city. Lu Ling was in the transcendent state. Although Li Yunxin's ocean of qi and mountain of snow was sealed, he was also in the transcendent state. Since that was the case, she wouldn't be so stupid to try to spy on him. So, since he had already repaid his life, she would go back and lure him into a trap. Chapter 100. By the time he returned to the city, it was already past noon. He turned onto the official road, which was 100 li of fertile fields on both sides, and heard the sound of a swona. He knew that the Lu family was holding a funeral. That night he had only heard the waiter say that someone had died, but he didn't know what kind of family background the Lu family had. Now that he looked at the official road, it was clear. The funerals held by the people of Qing were a bit strange. When foreigners came to Qing, they would think that the people of Qing were celebrating rather than mourning. When someone died in a normal family, they would invite an opera troupe to sing for a while. The repertoire was usually The Two Monarchs, or The Legend of the Rivers and Willows. But this Lu family had actually built a stage outside the city. Li Yunxin realized that this was the legendary, immortal voice carrying the coffin for 100 li. There was a stage every 5 li, regardless of whether or not there were people watching, but they had to sing for a full 24 hours. He walked forward for a while and saw the stage. In the morning they had built a 3-foot-high stage and a canopy to shelter them from the rain and sun. 3 actors were singing happily on the stage and there were only 3 passers-by watching. They were an old man with a bun in his hair, a strong man and a young boy. Li Yunxin walked to the side of the stage and casually glanced at it. He suddenly felt that it was a bit interesting. It was not the kind of play he thought it was. Rather than a play, it was more like a play. This was the first time he had seen a play of the Qin kingdom. The singing style was very common, and there were even dialogues in the middle as well as decent stage props. He felt that this thing was more like a combination of opera and play from his time. This was fun. This unexpected and novel scene caused him to unconsciously slow down his footsteps and take a few more glances at it. He found that they were playing The Two Monarchs. In this world, when people mentioned monarchs, they usually referred to Black Bai Yanjun. Li Yunxin had dealt with those two before, so he decided to stop and see what the two monarchs were like in the eyes of the common people. He found that the two monarchs told the story of how Black Bai Yanjun became Black Bai Yanjun. It was said that the two monarchs were originally people from the heavens, a pair of brothers. The Black Yama Lord was the elder brother, while Bai Yanjun was the younger brother. Bai Jun was unscrupulous in his actions and caused trouble everywhere he went. As his elder brother, He Jun had repeatedly advised him, but Bai Jun was unrepentant. One day Bai Jun was short of money to drink, so he stole the celestial Thearka's golden dung ladle and sold it in exchange for wine. A few days later, when the celestial emperor was going to dig out his own manure pit, he discovered that the scoop of manure was missing, so he got angry. As soon as the celestial the arch flared up, a rain of fire began to fall from the sky. This rain of fire lasted for 300 years and in the end all the humans were burned to death. It was only after the humans were all dead that the celestial the arch realized that Bai Jun had stolen the manure ladle. He said that humans in the mortal world had died because of Bai Jun, and that Bai Jun had committed a grave sin and wanted to execute him. However, He Jun pleaded for his younger brother, saying that since people were dead and the mortal world was full of dead souls, he was willing to stay with his younger brother in the dark center of the celestial sphere forever, becoming a pair of Yama kings who accompanied the dead souls and dealt with those dead souls. The celestial emperor was moved by the deep affection between the two brothers and agreed to his request. However, he was also afraid that the two of them would come to the mortal world and reveal the secrets of heaven, so he erased most of their memories. The two brothers thanked him repeatedly, then descended to the mortal world and became the later Black Bai Yanjun. When Li Yunxin looked at it, it was He Jun and Bai Jun who were disguised as the people of the celestial court, singing, "I, the celestial the arch, am magnanimous and benevolent, ask the black and white brothers to transform into human beings." He was a little dazed and after a while he let out a breath. What kind of F***king worldview is this? This was said a little too loudly and it startled the old man in front of him. The old man looked like he came from a well-to-do family. He wore a cotton robe with fine stitches and his beard was clean and soft. He turned his head to look at Li Yunxin and asked, "Why did this little brother say such a thing?" Li Yunxin wanted to turn around and leave, but for some reason he felt a sense of irritation in his heart. He frowned slightly, squinted his eyes under the hot sun, and looked at the silly man and ignorant child who had also turned around to look at him. He stuck out his tongue and pursed his dry lips and said, "Sir, didn't you notice something wrong?" The old man stroked his beard and thought for a while. "No?" Li Yunxin sighed. "The celestial arch is sick. His dung ladle was stolen and he killed mortals to vent his anger. He killed everyone and then said it was because of Bai Yanjun, and then a group of people sang praises of him. What kind of logic is this?" The old man thought for a while but did not say anything. Instead it was the tanned, simple-looking man who said, How can you say that? The celestial arch is the celestial arch. How could the celestial arch do anything wrong? Besides, the world is big and the celestial arch is the most powerful. Whatever he does, who can control him?" He thought for a while and then used the pair of straw sandals on his feet to rub the dried yellow mud on the wooden hoe beside him. "Besides, this is the way of the world. The wicked drink and eat meat, while the good suffer from the cold and poverty. Little brother, I understand what you are saying. You want to talk about justice. How can there be justice in this world? The teachers teach the children that the world has its own justice. If you ask me, how can there be justice? Whether a matter is fair or not, isn't it up to the adults to decide?" Hearing him say this, the old man hurriedly shook his head. "No, no. There is justice in this world. Not only is there justice, but there must also be kindness, and the neighbors help each other and live in harmony. If there is no such thing, the world will be chaotic. Look at how different people are from birds and beasts. For example, today when you went up the mountain to collect grass, you were injured by a beast on the side of the road. This old man saw that you were seriously injured, so I must help you. This is justice and kindness. Bah! So unlucky." The strong man suddenly became angry and spat on the ground. "There is no reason to listen to such unlucky words, you old killer." After saying that, he snorted again, picked up the wooden hoe and left. The old man's face turned red and he was stunned for a while before stamping his feet. "Hey, this person is unreasonable." Some thoughts emerged in Li Yunxin's mind. He wanted to say something, but when he saw the old man and the child in front of him, he felt his interest waning. At this time, the three performers on the stage finished their performance, changed their costumes and sat by the side of the stage to drink cold tea to rest. Seeing the old man stomping his feet in anger, the person who played the Celestial Emperor laughed. "Look at you, old man. It's not like you don't know anything. That man looks like he has a poor life trying to make a living in the fields and mountains. Why are you cursing him for being injured by a beast and not cursing him to die? How can I not be angry?" After drinking some water and wiping the sweat from his forehead, he said to Li Yunxin, "Little brother, you look like you come from a rich family, but you don't know the suffering of the world. How can there be so much justice in this world? This world is the law of the jungle, isn't it? Look, even if our Daqing state's emperor is wise and just judges the suffering of the world, you think there is justice in this world. But where did the Daqing state's rivers and mountains come from? It was Emperor Taizu who took it from the hands of the previous emperor. This Daqing state's justice in the end, is it not because the weak are prey to the strong and the strong are respected? So this world has always been like this. There is no such thing as justice. But even if there is no such thing, people must believe in it. Because there is no such thing. If they still don't believe in it, then they are no different from beasts. That's why children always like to say that there is injustice here and there, or feel that there is no justice in this world, and that it is okay to do all kinds of bad things. But only people who think clearly know that there is no such thing as justice in this world. But because there is no such thing, people must believe in it. Otherwise, if this world has no rules, etiquette and ethics, you are not the only one who can do bad things. When you go out and do bad things, when you return home, you find that your whole family has been killed. Isn't that even worse? If the world is finished, what good can you get? So I really don't like people who say that there is no such thing as justice in this world, and that everyone should be selfish. I also don't like people who think that this world should be fair and reasonable. Both of them are childish." He said all this in one breath. Next to him, Black Bai Yanjun laughed and punched him on the shoulder. As a person who used to be a believer, you really know how to talk. Unfortunately, I don't understand. After listening to his words, the old man stood still and frowned, deep in thought. Li Yunxin laughed and carefully looked at the middle-aged actor who played the Emperor of Heaven. He cupped his hands and asked, "How should I address you?" "Hey, I'm just an actor, there is no need to address me. Call me Old Wang." The actor smiled and waved his hand. He put down his bowl and stood up to greet the two people beside him. "Get up. If we release the Godfather again, we can't play tricks and take his money for nothing." Li Yunxin smiled and watched him put on his costume again. He thought for a moment and took out a piece of talisman paper from his sleeve. Then he bit his finger and drew a simple little person on the talisman paper. Then he put the paper on the edge of the stage. It could be blown away by a strong wind. "I'm giving you a talisman," he said to the actor who had already started singing. "It can save your life." The actor glanced at him. He was still singing, but it was unknown if he heard him clearly. However, Li Yunxin had already turned and walked away. The sun was at its strongest in the afternoon. The air on the road was slightly distorted. The music from the stage quickly turned into a faint background noise. After a while, there was only the rough sound of his shoes rubbing against the road. After walking for a while, he suddenly heard someone beside him ask, "Why did you give him a talisman?" "It's a talisman drawn with your own blood, and with your level of cultivation, it's hard to even ask for an emperor in the mortal world." Li Yunxin glanced sideways, then looked up at the sky. I forgot one thing. You are a Taoist priest in the place of the outer fringe. You can go to heaven." "So you were following me just now?" "Yes," Ling Kongzi said. Li Yunxin heaved a sigh. "I hope you can understand." Ling Kongzi kept quiet. After a while she asked again, "Why did you give him a talisman? He is just a mortal man." "There is always someone who can learn from me." What he said made me feel a little better. When people are in a good mood, they will be willful. I was being willful just now. Li Yunxin turned to look at her. "I am only 14, the age where I can be willful." "How old are you?" Ling Kongzi walked with him, but her steps were light as if she was flying. She hesitated for a while and said, 18. "A genius girl. You are already at the peak of the transcendent state at 18. Li Yunxin exclaimed. "But you are at the peak of the transcendent state. Can you handle Dragon Son? Tell me what you were doing when you saw him. Didn't you hear us? I can listen, but you will definitely notice it. So I only watched from afar." "Oh." Li Yunxin cracked a smile. After a while she said, "I replaced all the deity positions that belonged to him. Without the blessing of prayers he would become weaker. At least he would not become stronger. I told him that I did it because you forced me to do it. I did it to win your trust. I would pretend to be on your side when you were fighting and then give you a fatal blow." "He believed you?" "Logically speaking, I shouldn't believe it, but I can't not believe it. I've absorbed the power of will from the incense into my own body. I am a dying man, how could he not believe me?" He was still walking forward, yet Ling Kongzi had stopped his footsteps. She only paused for a moment before grabbing his arm from behind and checking his pulse. After a few seconds she let go of him. Why did you do that? You are only 14 and you are almost at the peak of the transcendent state. Do you know what that means? Genius. The kind that is rarely seen in hundreds or thousands of years." Li Yunxin said casually. "Anyway, you are awesome." Ling Kongzi stared at him. Her chest heaved up and down a few times. She forced herself to calm down quickly. Seeing that she was not so agitated, Li Yunxin continued to walk forward. Now, at this moment, maybe a few temples had changed the blessing of prayers. He felt more and more intense pain as if he was being cut by a knife. This pain caused his footsteps to become slightly slower, and his complexion to become even worse. When Ling Kongzi caught up, he said, "Do you know, someone from the Yin family died last night." "Oh, of course you don't know about the Yin family. The Yin family is quite influential in the city of Wei. They have a constable named Yin Pingji who is very popular. But that's not important. He has a little girl. She is 15 or 16 years old and she likes me very much. She used to come to the Dragon King temple to play and talk to me. But she is a girl after all. Although she is lively and bold, she is not old enough to confess to me. So she pesters me every day and smiles when she sees me. She doesn't like green onions. Well, green onions are fine. She died last night. It was casually eaten by the dragon's son. As I went to borrow a mirror before. Li Yunqing was silent for a while. He sighed and turned to look at Lu Ling seriously. Do you think she died because of me? Tell me, don't you think those great fiendish demons deserve to die? After a while, Lu Ling said softly, you should be used to seeing dead people. You should have killed people before. I did kill a lot of people. But those people came to me first. Li Yunqing smiled, but she was good to me. Lu Ling did not say anything. So I also have a part in the evil that I did with Dragon Son. Just now the actor talked about morality. From the perspective of humanity, I should not be with the demons. I deserve to die. From the perspective of humanity, since I see the ninth young master as a friend, I should not have worked with you to harm him. I deserve to die too. I am also an immoral person. Only by dying can I be worthy of myself. I said I wanted to go back to the mountain with you. I have no choice. You. Lu Ling said this word, but he didn't know what else to say. Li Yunqing laughed. So I did it voluntarily. This is called self-redemption, right? I used my life to win his trust. In fact, I can win your trust. If I didn't do it, how would you know if I was telling the truth? I want to know you are at the peak of the transcendent state. Can you and I really kill Dragon Son? If the Dragon Son is a little stronger, yes. If the two Dragon Sons are as strong or even stronger, do we have a handle? Chapter 101. Lu Ling had grown fond of silence. Li Yunqing couldn't see her expression, but he could tell that she was happy to see her expression change. After a while she said, you really don't care about your life. Maybe that's why you are a genius. It's a pity that you... She glanced at Li Yunqing. You could have come back with me and maybe you wouldn't have died. After a few more steps, the city gate was already in sight. There was a post house on the side of the road that provided shelter for passers-by. Lu Ling tugged at Li Yunqing's sleeve and said, let's take a break. She could already see the cold sweat on Li Yunqing's forehead and his pale lips. Based on her experience, she knew that he wasn't faking it. Li Yunqing took a few deep breaths and walked into the post house. He sat down on a long bench that was made from a few pieces of rough wood. There were 3 women sitting on the bench with baskets on their arms. They moved aside when they saw the 2 of them. Maybe it was because Lu Ling and Li Yunqing looked like sons and daughters of rich families, so they gave up half of the bench. However, Ling Kongzi didn't sit down. Instead, she stood next to Li Yunqing. She pressed 2 acupuncture points on Li Yunqing's shoulder and said, Dragon Son has 9. Not even a peak stage true state Daoist would be able to defeat the 8 Dragon Son. But this one is the 9th Dragon Son and he is the weakest one. I am at the peak stage of transcendent state and I have a Dharma treasure with me. He is so weak. Li Yunqing murmured. Not at all. Ling Kongzi shook her head. This 9th Dragon Son is at the peak stage of transcendent state. But the peak stage of transcendent state for us cultivators contains too many things. Cultivation methods, experience and techniques accumulated by predecessors, life-saving talismans bestowed by the sect, and even magical artifacts. Dragon Son and the monster demon are at the peak of transcendent state. They did not cultivate in Dharma access, had almost no artifacts and did not belong to any sections. He was already at the peak of the transcendent state with his fiend body and demonic powers. Think about it. A mortal who was born at the peak of the transcendent state. He wasn't weak at all. On the contrary, he's shockingly strong. If we were to talk about meeting on a narrow path, I would have died by its hands. Even a Daoist who had just stepped into the true state would not be able to gain an advantage. However, I had time to prepare and set up a talisman formation. Once he came in, he wouldn't be able to leave. As for those 2 Dragon Sons, they can probably be killed. But if you want to say stronger, how much stronger? The 3 women sitting at the side were all dumbfounded at this time. They looked at each other as if they had seen a ghost, got up and left in a hurry. They probably thought that the couple looked good. Why did it have to be 2 lunatics? After the 3 women left, Lu Ling went to the other side and sat down on a stool. There was a weed growing under the stool and it sprouted very long. Li Yunqing plucked out the grass stalk and fiddled with the soft green stalk on her fingers. Then he said, after all, he is a dragon son, known as the Wei River Dragon King. I don't know what you think, but I think he is a living true god near the city of Wei. Then there should be a dragon palace. Could there be magic treasures or something like that in there? Or would there be a friend? Dragon palace? Ling Kongzi's voice became strange. How could he have a dragon palace? I don't blame you. No one told you about this. If a great demon in charge of a land has a temporary imperial residence, it is not built by itself. I mean, of course it can build it by itself, but it is useless, just like a house built by an ordinary person. A real temporary imperial residence. How should I put it? You can think of it as something like a cultivator's snow mountain and ocean of qi. For example, if the Nine-Dragon Sun has a lot of followers in the land, it can gradually build its own temporary imperial residence with the power of faith. This thing is also owned by ordinary demons. You can say that they are either revered or hated by people, and there are always people thinking about them. If someone knows about them, they will give birth to this thing. There is no other use. Apart from shelter, it can also protect itself by hiding inside. It is barely a Dharma treasure of demons. After listening to her, Li Yunqing realized that things were a little different from what he imagined. He used to watch movies and TV series, and the Dragon King naturally had a dragon palace, no matter how shabby it was. But he never thought about, where did it come from? Now he knew that it was the devotee's power of faith that added bricks and tiles to the construction. For example, if a small demon cultivated itself but no one knew about it, then it was just a small demon. If it did too many bad things or good things and there were too many people who believed in it or feared it, the power of faith would not only increase its power, but also slowly give birth to another thing. A temporary imperial residence. For example, this small demon happened one day. There was a small wooden barrel the size of a palm next to his hand. It could shrink into the wooden barrel and was hard to find, and it could heal and breathe. And the damage that the wooden barrel could withstand was much more than what it could bear. Later, this small demon became a big demon and it had more followers. Maybe the wooden barrel would become more beautiful, and the furnishings inside would also increase. In other words, this thing was a kind of Sumer space that could evolve. But according to Lu Ling, the current 9th young master's temporary imperial residence was definitely not big enough to be called a dragon palace that could control thousands of aquatic creatures and millions of miles of weather. Li Yunqing was in a daze for a while. As it was very strange. This thing, or this rule, no matter how he looked at it, it seemed like it was created by someone. No wonder when he asked the 9th young master, "Where is the temporary imperial residence?" that night, the demon suddenly became angry. It was really not a piece of information that could be revealed to others. Moreover, he did not seem to have a dragon palace. Damn it. Bai Yanjun did not mention this to him. Maybe he did not know. Now Li Yunqing was more and more sure that he did not come up with the idea of taking over the body of the mythical beast. However, a sharp pain in his chest abruptly interrupted his train of thought. He coughed twice and the grass in his hand was juicy. Another portrait was hung up. Now he had more spiritual power to use. It was almost half of what he had before he was sealed. But now he was clear that he was closer to death. He stood up and sighed, "Let's go. It's time to rest. I still want to hear more about you. I have lived in seclusion in the mountains since I was a child, and I have always been curious. If I had a better life, I would not have to worry about whether I could survive or not. But I would have been born in an immortal sect like yours. What a happy life it would have been. But I hope I can live a better life in my next life." Lu Ling hesitated for a while and said, "I will tell you." So he told Li Yunqing everything along the way. He knew that some words were true and some were false. But it did not prevent him from gradually sketching a picture in his mind, as well as the general trend of the world. Finally, they separated at the intersection where Lu Ling met Qiao Jiaming for the first time. It was getting dark. Chapter 102. In the following 3 days, Li Yunqing only did a few ordinary things. He walked through the streets and alleys in the city of Wei and talked with people. Most of the things he talked about were strange things in the scenery of the Qin kingdom. It seemed that he wanted to see the world that he never had time to see before he died. Because of that night, he had already become famous in the upper class of the city of Wei. Therefore, when he passed by a rich family, he would walk to the door and say, "I am Li Yunqing," to the gatekeeper. Some would sneer and walk away if they didn't know who he was. Therefore, the owner of the family would be glad that the gatekeeper didn't know who he was and didn't report. Who would want to be associated with the enemy of Langya Cave? Some gatekeepers heard about this person from the owner and knew he was an extraordinary and ominous person, so they hurried to report. Then some people said they were sick or not. Li Yunqing would also walk away on her own. Some were timid and forced themselves to come in. Li Yunqing sat down to eat something and then drew a picture. Once he drew, the worst one he could draw would be a famous one. He would leave it to the family and send it to the temple of the Dragon King for only 100 taels of silver. Those who didn't see him the next day were full of regret when they learned about this, because they also heard that Li Yunqing and Fairy Ling Kong were chatting harmoniously on the street. They realized that he might feel that he was leaving the city of Wei and wanted to leave some money for Lu Laodao. And the relationship between him and Fairy Ling Kong didn't seem that bad. Thus, he harshly reprimanded the gatekeepers, instructing them that if they saw Li Yunqing visiting again, they must inform him. It was a pity that Li Yunqing's route in the city of Wei was erratic and his intentions were hard to figure out. For example, on the second day he was walking by the Willow River. Suddenly he said to someone, "The sunlight here is very good." Then he squatted down by the river bank and used an ordinary little brush to draw on a blue stone slab. With a stroke of the brush, the seemingly soft weasel hair directly carved a mark on the slate. Such a miraculous event naturally spread from 1 to 10, and from 10 to 100. As a result, half of the people on the street gathered around to watch the strange drawing of the martial arts master. He drew circles one after another and then drew many lines around the circles, saying that he was the sun. But after drawing for a while he threw away his brush, said it was boring and walked away. Ling Kongzi knew about these things and personally visited those houses to see the paintings left behind by Li Yunqing. He discovered that it was indeed an ordinary masterpiece. He was much more skilled than the artists in the secular world, but there was nothing to be suspicious about. Then she went to see the sun that Li Yunqing had carved by the river. It was indeed an unfinished painting. There wasn't even the slightest trace of spiritual power fluctuation. After investigating all the traces he left behind, Lu Ling gradually relaxed. It seemed that Li Yunqing really just wanted to leave something in this world and prepare for his death. She was surprised by Li Yunqing's behavior, but not to the extent that she couldn't understand it. She just felt that he was such a person, really good to a secular Laodao, sad for the death of a little girl and even willing to give up his life because of betraying friendship. He was really a very interesting person. Unfortunately, he was going to die. Lu Ling occasionally felt flustered and lost. This was not the result she wanted. At first she only wanted to kill this person, get the jade scroll and then return to the mountain. Later she felt that he was interesting and wanted to bring him back to the mountain. He might not die, maybe his cultivation would just be destroyed. But the Langya Cave was a good place. Secular people without cultivation could also live for a long time there. But she didn't expect that. He was actually planning to die here. Well, actually she couldn't be sure. She just felt that something was not right. She had to at least see him die with her own eyes to be at ease. Thinking of this, Lu Ling sighed slightly and waved the talisman-covered magic brush in her hand again. Every time she waved it, a golden light appeared in the void and disappeared in a flash. It was said that there were no words in this world. But the Celestials created the celestial sphere and created all things in the world. After creating all things they created humans. Humans then asked the Celestials what those things were. The Celestials explained them one by one, but humans couldn't remember them all. Thus, the Celestials extracted the rules of all things, simplified them into words and pictures and taught them to mortals. Thus there was Daotong in the painting sect. When the secular people wrote, they just wrote. But what the Daoists wrote were the secret names of all things in the world, and what they wrote were the rules of the great Tao of all things in the world. If the painting sect was the spirit of painting, then Daotong was the theory of calligraphy. Compared to the spirit of the painting sect, the rules were simpler and more direct. It was this simplicity that led to the Daoists' shocking destructive power. But the words that Ling Kongzi wrote in the void could not be understood by the secular people. And even if they accidentally saw it, they would die on the spot. Because what she was writing was the secret name of an item passed down by Daotong. It was called death. The first and only curse that a cultivator at the peak of transcendent state could master. The curse of death. It would cut off the opponent's chi vitality and all the laws of the world. If the opponent's level of cultivation was much higher than the opponent's, one word would be enough to take his life. Against a powerful monster like Long Sun, even if one word couldn't kill him, it could set up an array with the word. Death was not just the death of life and death. Plants would wither and the karma would be cut off. Once the array was completed, it could temporarily cut off Long Sun's fate and karma. Once he entered the array, he would not be able to return. Just like that, she wrote 7 to 7 times before she finally stopped and let out a long sigh of relief. Then she closed her eyes and rested for a while. She walked to the window and looked at the sky outside. It was already dark. In the courtyard where she was, the plants cast a mottled shadow. After looking at the shadow, she said, "Come in. Tell me." Zhou Xian, a Daoist from the Danding sect of Xianxia, pushed the door open and came in. But after taking 2 steps into the door, she stopped. Fairy's words. That Li Yunxin is painting everywhere today just like the previous 2 days. But at noon on the street he caused a little trouble. Lu Ling tilted her head slightly. Little trouble? Actually, it wasn't because of him. Zhou Xian thought for a while and said slowly, "Today I secretly followed him to the Chongmen Street and it was the opening time of the market. Fairy, you may not know, but at the middle and end of every month, the villagers would come to the Chongmen Street of the city of Wei for the market. This time, no need to explain, go on." Ling Kongzi listened as she slowly walked around the room, and her slender white hand gently brushed past everything around her. When she touched a string of green grapes on the fruit plate on the table, she gently brushed it. The raisins fell into the porcelain plate with a clatter, leaving only a forked stem. She picked up the stalk, fiddled with the soft green broken stem on her fingers and whispered to herself, "Today should be his last chance." That Li Yunxin also came to the Chongmen Street today. He set up a stall on the street saying that he was selling portraits for fun. Zhou Xian continued, "He painted some portraits without using any spiritual power. I asked someone to intercept the person who took his portrait after he walked away and checked the portrait. They said it was indeed an ordinary ink painting casually made. But in the afternoon he painted a rare scroll for a beggar." Chapter 103. Ling Kongzi paused for a second and then shook his head. But he couldn't think of the right words to describe him. He was indeed a rare character in the world and it was hard to describe. The 2 Taoist priests in the cave had just entered the transcendent state, but they already thought they were great. They spent a lot of treasures and spent 10 years to make a painting. Now this Li Yunxin. Oh, he made a painting for the beggar? What happened? Zhou Xian hurriedly said, In the afternoon, Li Yunxin brought a stack of paper, an inkstone and a pen to Chongmen Street. He hired his table from a fortune teller for a tale of silver under a weeping willow by the side of the street and sat down. The willow was not easy to grow insects and it was cool. He sat there with his eyes closed for a while before he opened them and looked at the pedestrians on the street. When he saw a man whom he liked, as those who watched him put it, he beckoned to him and asked if he would like to have his portrait painted. Half of the people thought it was a trick, so they waved their hands and walked away. The other half of the people took his drawings with some suspicion, and left happily thinking that they were very good. Occasionally there were 1 or 2 people who knew him before, and they couldn't hide their excitement even if they tried. Li Yunxin frowned and said, "Go away, I don't want you." The person would then ask why. With pain and disappointment, Li Yunxin said, "You already know me, so what's the point? Those who don't know me can take the painting back. It will be fun when they know it's valuable. Or they can throw it away and it will be fun when they know it's valuable." Since they knew who he was and what he was capable of, they could only leave with their tails between their legs. After 2 hours, Li Yunxin saw a beggar. The beggar was very old, skinny and unkempt. But surprisingly, the beggar was clean. He was wearing shabby clothes but clean and dry. His hair was messy but not greasy. He was not like an ordinary beggar who would hide in a corner and ask for money. His way of begging actually had a bit of character. Squinting his eyes, he walked to the pedestrians and recited a few lines of poetry. The poem was not written by him and it did not fit the scene. He probably wrote it down from some poetry collection. Then he said a few more auspicious words. If the person pushed him away impatiently, he would not pester him. Only when the man stopped walking did he ask for something after he spoke. Li Yunxin stared at him for a while before asking someone about this old beggar. He knew that this person was a butcher. Their ancestors had been butchers for generations, so their lives were not bad. Originally, his family was satisfied with being a butcher. They felt that they could buy some land in the future and upgrade to a landlord. But at this time he had other ideas. He felt that he had to do something great and that he could not pass his life in mediocrity. Thus, after his father passed away, he closed the shop and focused on his studies. He started studying at the age of 20, and when he was 28 he could not even be a scholar. In fact, it was not that he was not diligent but that he was stupid. Ordinary people could try to annotate after studying for 3 or 4 years. He read 1,000 books of poetry for 4 years and still could not memorize them all. He studied for another 2 years, and when he was 30 he gave up his pen and joined the army. But the Daqing state had been peaceful for a long time, and there was no chance for him to achieve anything. Thus he stayed in the army for 10 years and did not even become a corporal. Finally he was disheartened and returned home. But on the way he met bandits. After all, he had been in the army for 10 years, so they fought together. In the end he killed one and injured another. He was not alone, there were a few people from the same hometown, but they were all cowering. The bandits were also a motley crew. 5 or 6 of them, seeing someone die, quickly ran away. His companions sent him back to the city of Wei. When the magistrate knew about this, he privately rewarded him with 50 taels of silver. He told him to rest and recuperate, and when he recovered he would be the village leader. But he was seriously injured and almost lost his life. After half a year he finally recovered, but he had an eye disease and could only see people dimly. When he was about to recover, the magistrate fell sick again. He died after 3 months of illness, and no one talked about being the village leader anymore. After that, his hands and feet were not nimble and his eyes were not useful, so he slowly spent all his money. When he was 60 he was completely destitute, and after 2 or 3 years he finally begged on the streets. But after all, he was a scholar and an old soldier. Besides, he had killed bandits and almost became the village leader. He should have some strength of character. As he became like this. After listening to his story, Li Yunxin paid attention to him. The storyteller asked, "Why not draw a portrait of this beggar?" Li Yunxin only shook his head. After a while, when it was almost dinner time, a peddler pushed a cart to sell sour soup. This was a kind of noodles made from fermented corn, and it was quite appetizing in this season. The steaming hot stall looked very attractive in the golden sunlight. The sour soup could be eaten with pickled vegetables or stir-fried. People who rushed to the market came to buy it and then squatted at the side to eat. At this time the old beggar rested not far from Li Yunxin, looking at the stall and muttering to himself. Others couldn't hear clearly in the noise, but he could. The old beggar seemed to be talking to someone beside him, but also muttering to himself. "Back then I was guarding the border of Wuwei Castle. I stayed in the castle with my brothers for a month, and as soon as I came out I wanted to eat sour soup. The sour soup at that time." When he said this he stopped, swallowed his saliva and stopped talking. He raised his face and squinted at the stall. Li Yunxin didn't know if he could only see the afterglow of the setting sun, or the vague shadow of the stall. But he also felt that he seemed to be looking at something else. What? In the afterglow of the setting sun, the youth that could no longer be captured. The confidant who waited for a lifetime in her hometown but eventually turned into white bones, and he could only sit in front of the grave until dawn. In the past he stood in the strong wind of Wuwei Castle with a group of young people from all over the world, drinking hard liquor with their chests open, thinking about when to ride horses to Mount Yen, but in the end their hair turned white. Would he regret it? The old man looked at it for a while, stood up with some difficulty, took out a few coins and walked to the stall. He stood by the stall, closed his eyes and sniffed the slightly sour smell in the wind, saying, "Little brother, give me a bowl of soup." The young peddler frowned. "Huh?" The old man squinted, trying to find the small pot for boiling sour soup, and pointed. "Soup? Just give me a bowl of soup." The peddler pondered for a while before realizing that the old beggar only wanted soup, not noodles. After looking at it for a while he waved his hand. "Not selling. Go go go." As he waved his hand he leaned back slightly, ready for the old man to pester him again. But the old man just sighed, turned around and slowly walked away. The peddler frowned and whispered, "Sick." Li Yunxin looked for a while and laughed. Chapter 104. He stood under the tree opposite the peddler and waved his hand. Hey, you give me a bowl, bring it to me. The peddler listened to his words and looked at him again. He frowned and said, do it yourself. Then he ignored him. Turned out that he had a temper. The people around him all knew who he was. Seeing that the new peddler didn't know who he was and disrespected him, they were thinking about how he would teach him a lesson. But they were surprised to find that Li Yunxin just smiled and said nothing. Then he picked up the brush and spread the paper on the table. He made a painting called Xiangyuan painting, a freehand painting of young boys and girls releasing lanterns by the river during the Lantern Festival. At this time, the afterglow of the setting sun had almost disappeared from the horizon. Some peddlers had already come out to light lanterns. Li Yunxin threw away the brush and stood up. Using 2 fingers to hold the painting, the ink was still wet. She walked to the riverside and stood still. Then he said loudly, who gives me a bowl of sour soup to eat? I will perform a magic trick, okay? Hearing this, the servants of the rich families who had been waiting for a chance immediately went to the peddler's stall to grab a bowl of sour soup and ran to Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin took a bowl, raised his head and ate it in one gulp. Then he picked up the painting with one hand and slowly put the bowl on the painting with the other. He put it on the painting and continued to put it on. The painting seemed to have a bottomless pit that sucked the bowl in. Everyone's jaws dropped when they saw this. The peddler also saw this scene and was stunned at first. Then he shouted, how did you make my bowl disappear? Someone in the crowd said impatiently, I will compensate you later for a broken bowl. So the peddler stopped talking and also came forward to watch Li Yunxin's magic trick. Li Yunxin held the painting with both hands and showed it to the front and back. Some people with sharp eyes who were close to him exclaimed. The bowl just now appeared in the painting. In the painting, the young boys and girls were releasing lotus lanterns by the river. Now, in the middle of the lotus lantern, there was a colorful porcelain bowl which was very eye-catching. Everyone cheered loudly when they saw this and they felt that it was extremely brilliant. But she heard Li Yunxin say with a smile, thank you for your kindness. A drop of gratitude must be repaid with a spring of gratitude. Now let me treat you. With that said, he shook the painting and a clattering sound could be heard. Everyone hurriedly looked at the ground in front of him, wanting to see if another bowl would magically appear. But after looking for a long time there was nothing. Just as he was feeling slightly disappointed, someone pointed at the Willow River behind Li Yunxin and said, look, look, look. The sky was already dark and the Willow River was also dark. But in this dim river, a bright lotus lantern floated down along with the current. First there was 1, then 2, 3, 4. In just 2 or 3 breaths of time, the Willow River was lit up by countless pink lotus lanterns that emitted a soft glow. The Willow River became extremely beautiful in such an evening. The soft light reflected the color of the water, the sky, and the faces of the people by the river. People were first shocked by the sudden beauty, and then by Li Yunxin's means. Wasn't this the scene in his painting? After the extreme shock, they remembered that Li Yunxin had previously put a bowl in the river, and remembered that he said he would treat people to sour soup. So they hurriedly looked at the dark part of the river. They really saw a bowl of hot sour soup floating between the lotus lanterns. One person walked to the river and carefully reached out to grab it. He thought it was an illusion. But he really did get it. He tasted it in front of everyone and after a slight daze, his face was full of surprise. It's real. Everyone had eaten sour soup before. But the sour soup that was made by someone floating in the river. No one had eaten it before. Like a swarm of bees, they swarmed to the riverside to retrieve the porcelain bowl. Even the vendor selling sour soup also ran over, intending to take a bowl. There were so many bowls, if he fished them all up he wouldn't be afraid that they would break in the future. The old beggar squinted and looked at the soft light by the river, but after all he didn't dare to follow. Li Yunxin stood under the willow tree with his hands behind his back, watching those people running down the river embankment, and the side of his face was illuminated by the candlelight. He watched for a while, sighed slightly and walked to the side of the old beggar sitting under another tree. He handed the painting in his hand to him. You take it. But it's not something you can take. Someone will come to buy it from you and you can take as much as you want. The old beggar barely saw what he did and he also recognized his voice. So he was shocked and didn't dare to take it. Immortal you. It's not an immortal, it's just a trick. He stuffed the painting into the old beggar's hand, not caring that it was wrinkled. Then he squinted slightly, looking at those people under the river embankment. They are all like this. They are only visible, easy to see. A bowl of sour soup, a little money, a little power. As for the other things, I don't have time to see them. But I like you. You know what you want and why you live. He withdrew his gaze and looked at the old beggar. The old beggar fell to the ground, trying to smooth the paper that was wrinkled by Li Yunxin. But after all, he couldn't see it clearly and he didn't control his movements. Some people who were staring at the painting in the dark felt their hearts tremble. Don't break the painting. Li Yunxin smiled and walked slowly behind him. He pressed his shoulders with both hands and suddenly whispered in his ear, "In this world, do you still have any worries?" The old beggar was stunned and said after a while, "Oh, I don't have anything to worry about. It's just me." Li Yunxin asked again, "Are you tired of this world?" The old beggar was still stunned for a while and then said, "Alas, I've lived enough. I'm just waiting for God to accept me." Li Yunxin straightened his back and asked again, "What about the human heart?" The old man was silent for a long time and then said, The human heart is sinister. But there are always some good things." Li Yunxin smiled faintly in the light of the river. Then he let out a sigh, untied the old beggar's loose and messy hair, and slowly combed it with his 10 slender fingers. And in such an evening in the dim light, while combing his hair, he read a poem in a low voice. White jade capital in the sky. 12 buildings and 5 cities. Immortals touch my head. Tie my hair and receive immortality. After these 4 lines of the poem, he had combed Lao Dao's hair into a Daoist bun. The old beggar didn't know why and didn't dare to move. And Li Yunxin looked at his white hair and was silent for a while. He asked him, "Do you wish for immortality?" This was a very soft and low voice. But the old man caught this sentence in the warm night wind and in the voice of the people. After a moment of silence, the beggar felt lucky and said with a trembling voice, "I wish." Before he finished, Li Yunxin lifted him up and pushed him on his back and pushed him into an alley. "Then this painting is your fortune. Think about it, do you still want to sell it?" After saying this, he waved his big sleeves and strode away from Chongmen Street like the wind. Chapter 105. The old beggar was pushed to the entrance of the alley by Li Yunxin. He steadied himself by holding the wall and turned around to look for the immortal. But night had fallen. He could only see a hazy light, but he couldn't see anyone. Thinking of the immortal's words, he looked around subconsciously, folded the paper carefully and put it in his pocket. But he couldn't stop it. This painting. It was not an ordinary painting. Even if it was a dozen or dozens of steps away, the brilliant painter could still see. The spiritual power on it was surging. This was a rare painting. As soon as the old man entered the alley, the people who were eating the sour soup by the riverbank felt something was wrong. At first, the sour soup was delicious. But as more people ate it, the taste became bland. After dozens of people ate it, the people behind them started to eat. It tasted no different from the river water. After a few breaths of time, there were no more lanterns coming from upstream. The lanterns in the downstream gradually dimmed. The Willow River became dark again. The people who were too excited because of the miraculous event just now remembered to look for the young and handsome immortal, but he was long gone. Then they were annoyed. Why did they eat sour soup? Why didn't they ask the immortal for a talisman? But the peddler was smiling by the river. He ate 4 bowls and was so full that he almost vomited. Then he went to collect the porcelain bowls. After collecting more than 10 bowls, he couldn't carry all of them, so he stepped on those that he couldn't carry away, not wanting to let others have it. When the group of people walked back to the riverbank, he also walked back to his stall with the bowls in his arms. But after a few seconds, the people who were still talking about the miraculous event suddenly heard the peddler scream. Then they saw him sitting behind his stall, slapping his thighs and crying, "Damn Daoist priest, what you just ate was my sour soup. That bowl is also mine. I stepped on more than 10 bowls for nothing." After crying for a while, he suddenly stood up and pulled people. Don't leave, don't leave. Whoever ate my bowl, give me back my money." But no one paid any attention to him. The people who had suddenly understood sneered, sighed, and were surprised as they avoided him and ran away. Just at this time, the old beggar was stopped in the alley. The aura of the newcomer was different from those who had been waiting near Li Yunxin for him to paint. This was a calm and steady man dressed in black. His face was covered with a black cloth and he held a dagger in his hand. She jumped down from the corner of the alley and kicked the old man to the ground. Then she put her hand into his bosom. The beggar thought of what Li Yunxin had said before and immediately covered his chest with his hands like a madman, saying, "The Immortal promised me, the Immortal promised me. Come, ah." The voice stopped abruptly. As soon as the masked man heard him speak, he silently but forcefully pressed his hands against his chest and slit his throat. Clean, straightforward, and without the slightest hesitation. Her technique was beautiful. Then he stretched out his hand and carefully took the painting out of the old beggar's arms. After confirming that it was indeed a concept art, Zhou Xian rolled it up and placed it into a pouch before keeping it in his robes. Then he casually threw the dagger beside the corpse, took off the mask on his face, and tore off the black clothes on his body, throwing them beside the old man's corpse. After doing all that, the masked man, then he strode out of the alley with a solemn expression. He looked left and right with extreme vigilance and grabbed a passerby, saying sternly, "Go to the magistrate's office immediately and get someone here. There's a murder." The passerby who was suddenly grabbed was about to explode, but when he saw the man's black clothes he didn't say anything. When he took a closer look at the man's face he hurriedly said, "Ah, it's Inspector Yin. Cut the crap. A murder. Go now." With that he pushed hard and the passerby dared not say anything else and hurriedly ran away. As for Yin Pingji, he waved away a few passerby who were about to turn into the alley, and stood guard there with a gloomy expression. He raised his voice again, "A murder. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. Stand 3 feet away." And so the crime scene was protected by Inspector Yin, who happened to pass by. Not long after, the magistrate of the mansion arrived. This place wasn't under the jurisdiction of Liuhe Mansion, but Yin Pingji found out about this and it was a great help to them. Therefore, after expressing his gratitude, he politely sent Yin Pingji off. This murderer carried such a precious scroll in his arms. He openly walked along Chongmen Street and walked to the back street of the magistrate's office. The vicinity of the magistrate's office had always been quiet. He looked at both ends of the back street and there was no one there. He only felt a slight chill. Therefore he touched his neck, stretched out his hand and lightly knocked on the door 3 times. The door opened. A manservant stuck his head out and when he saw it was him he opened the door wider. Yin Pingji flashed in and personally turned around to close the door. But in fact he wasn't the only one who entered. The old beggar's soul, with a trace of a blood-red knife mark on his throat, also entered with him. At the moment of his death, the soul stood up from his body. In a trance, this old man who had seen a lot of things, realized he was dead. He stood there in a daze for a moment and then he remembered and only remembered one thing: the Immortals gave me immortality. This intense obsession caused his originally indistinct soul body to become much clearer. Without thinking, he pounced on Yin Pingji's body, using both his hands and feet to cling onto him, riding on his back and kept digging into his clothes. "Give me back my scroll. I want immortality." However, whether it was the ghost Yin Pingji or any observant person, none of them would notice that there were actually 2 people in the alley. In my opinion, alas, that Li Yunxin and that devil are actually the same kind of people. They're both devils. See? Bai Yanjun said in a sharp voice, gloating, "Do you want immortality? Alas, isn't this immortality? Kikik. He tied a Taoist bun for this old man. That's the fruit of fate. We can't take it anymore." The Black Yama King thought about it coldly, and repeated Bai Yanjun's words with a tone of agreement. He's indeed a devil. But this time, could it be that he really had some good intentions? He then shifted his gaze to the old man's ghost. This person has suffered for a lifetime. It can be said that he has made up for the sins of his ancestors. But now it can be said that the worst of it has turned into bliss. Can be considered as compensation for the 5 lives he saved back then. From now on, it depends on his fate. Let's go. That emperor of Li Kingdom died after a quarter of an hour. Lure him there. And so this old beggar's soul coiled around Yin Pingji's body, following him all the way to the magistrate's yamen. But once they entered the yamen, a majestic and chilling aura pressed down on this ghost's body like a mountain. Qi and aura, in the eyes of cultivators, were things that truly existed. For example, there were hundreds of thousands of people living in the city of Wei, and its Xianxia soared to the sky. That big ghost wore a human's skin and hid in the city of Wei. No matter how powerful the ninth young master was, it would be difficult to find it in the sky full of Xianxia. Since it was a place of human settlement, there were activities such as birth, death, marriage, and punishment. There would also be residential houses, commercial houses, memorial homes, and government offices. Each structure and qi dynamic were different, and thus formed the qi and aura of a city. In the eyes of feng shui experts, a house was a life, and a big city was a giant beast with endless qi dynamic. And in the body of this giant beast, in the body of this city, was the core of the city's power, the place that everyone feared, the yamen. Once he entered the yamen, the majestic and chilling aura pressed down on him like an avalanche. How could the old beggar's soul withstand such a strong force of humanity? Immediately his figure blurred from the impact on Yin Pingji's back, and it was about to dissipate. But this ghost was not destined to die. An obsession remembered that the immortal gave him a painting and wished for immortality, and rushed to the chest again. His figure was blurred like a candle in the wind. At this time he pounced again and actually pounced into the chest like a puff of smoke. Then, on the riverside of the upper Yuan painting, an old man's figure appeared. Chapter 106. Yin Pingji was led into the door by the servant, but he wasn't in a hurry to leave. He followed the servant to a craggy rockery and asked, "How did official Zhao do today?" The servant's eyes were red and swollen as if he had just cried. He said in a hoarse voice, "These few days he beat and scolded everyone he saw. He doesn't love me anymore and has been spending the night at Madame Sun's place. I don't know the details." Yin Pingji thought for a while and said to himself, "Madame Sun, her father is the third imperial censor. He went to please her. Did anyone else come these few days?" The servant rubbed his eyes. "I did as third uncle said and paid attention to the horses in the yamen stables. I really did see a long-haired horse from the north. Someone from the north must have come. After that person left, official Zhao didn't seem so distressed anymore, I guess. Good, good, good." Yin Pingji let out a sigh of relief. Someone from the Zhao family came. Our magistrate is after all a member of the Zhao family. Then this painting of mine will be like charcoal in snowy weather. You lead third uncle and don't cry. Your cousin's revenge. Humph. The servant heard this and hurriedly looked up with wide eyes. Revenge? Third uncle, do you know who did it? Yin Pingji gritted his teeth. I can't tell you right now. Just lead the way. The servant wanted to ask more, but he knew that his third uncle didn't have a good temper. He could only sigh in his heart for his bitter sister Yin, wiped his eyes with his sleeve and led Yin Pingji through the back garden. When they reached the back room, the servant said, "Third uncle, wait a moment. Official is inside, I'll go report." But after a quarter of an hour, the servant came out, covered his face and said, "Official's temper is still not good, but he finally agreed to see third uncle. When you go in, be careful." Yin Pingji didn't wait for him to finish and casually agreed, walking to the door. He slightly tidied up his clothes, straightened his hat, pushed the door open, entered, closed the door behind him and walked 2 steps forward with his head held high. Magistrate Zhao was sitting in front of the table. The room was dimly lit with only 2 candles. He was reading a book with one hand. When he heard Yin Pingji enter, he only squinted at him for a moment before looking away. After reading for a while, he said, "I know you. Just say it. I'm very annoyed. Tell me what's important." After saying that, he went back to reading, but it was obvious that he was using the act of reading to calm his mood. He had actually been reading that page for a quarter of an hour. Yin Pingji took a deep breath and took out the brocade pouch from his bosom. He took a few steps forward and placed it on the table in front of the prefectural magistrate with both hands. In a deep voice he said, "I am here to offer charcoal in a snowy day to you, and also to seek a good future for myself." After saying this, Magistrate Zhao frowned slightly. "Get out." For a moment Yin Pingji thought he had misheard. But after seeing the intense disgust on Magistrate Zhao's face, he realized that he had not misheard. His Excellency was not in the mood to hear what he was going to say next and said directly to him, "Get out." Because what he didn't know and what his nephew who served Magistrate Zhao didn't know, was that in the past few days, Many people had come to see this magistrate who was about to lose his power through various channels, and had made many suggestions that they thought were brilliant. These suggestions made Magistrate Zhou completely lose his patience. 2 hours ago, someone had suggested to this magistrate to take the city of Wei to conquer the world. This person was now stripped naked and locked in the prison. As a result, when Yin Pingji said what he believed to be a sudden clap of thunder, the prefectural magistrate knew the reason for his visit. Get out. But he still tried to make a little effort. He didn't get out obediently but quickly opened the brocade pouch on the table, took out the picture scroll and unfolded it. With an eager and expectant tone he said, "Your Excellency, look at this picture." The painter said it's a rare scroll. Magistrate Zhou stared at the page for a while, then slightly frowned and glanced at the picture. Then he turned his head and continued to read, while using one hand to take the picture, shook it, coughed and put it in front of his face. After looking at it carefully for a while he said, "Why do you say it's a rare scroll? Such a rare scroll? I saw him make it with my own eyes. It was made by that Li Yunxin." Yin Pingji said hurriedly, "After making this picture that Li Yunxin went to the river. I watched him for 3 days. I was afraid of missing out, so I brought a knowledgeable painter with me. That painter said it's a rare scroll. I think it's not wrong. I came to present it to you." He told her the whole story in an urgent and methodical way, including the fact that he had killed the beggar. The prefectural magistrate listened quietly, thought for a while and put down the scroll in his hand. Then he stared at him in the dim candlelight. "You have courage. But I can't even protect myself at this time. What future do you want from me?" At the end of his words, Yin Pingji knelt down on one knee and said, "Although I am an official, fortunately I have many friends, so I am not ignorant. So I know that you are from the Zhou family. You are from the Zhou family in the north. It is said that this world belongs to the Son of Heaven. But there are also people who say that this world belongs to the Zhou family. I don't know too much inside information, but I do know that since the establishment of this dynasty, among the 34 virtuous officials who have entered the Taishu Pavilion, 26 of them have the surname Zhao. Knowing this, I know that you will definitely not lose power. Even if you have to temporarily avoid the limelight, be demoted or lose your official position, there will be a day when you will rise again. I am 43 years old this year and I am an official by birth. I am illiterate. Being a constable in Liuhe Prefecture is already the end of my road, and there is no possibility of advancing. So I know that if I want to have any achievements I must take an unconventional approach. You, my lord, are my unconventional approach." After saying this he bowed deeply. After a while he heard Lord Zhao say, "You think? Your words are like a clap of thunder, making me feel that you are a novel, interesting and unusual person? Stupid. If it wasn't for the sake of your painting, I would have killed you on the spot based on the words 'This world belongs to the Zhao family.' The Zhao family of the north has received the emperor's kindness for generations." He cupped his hands towards the north and said sternly, "This world belongs to His Majesty. How can there be a second way?" He then softened his tone, "If you say this in front of me again, I will definitely not forgive you." Yin Pingji was slightly stunned, then he took a deep breath and said with a trembling voice, "Thank you, my lord. Yin Pingji is willing to serve you." But the magistrate looked at him meaningfully for a while, then said, "I know you. In the past, when Li Yaoxi came to my prefecture to discuss matters, he always praised you, saying that you are steady and experienced. But today, why did you say these words so abruptly? You don't sound like a constable of a prefecture, but more like those frivolous children." Yin Pingji slowly raised his head, looked at Lord Zhao and said in a low voice, "I will let you know, my lord, these days I have also." "That's true." He took a few more deep breaths, calmed his emotions and then continued, "These days my heart has also been like a knife being twisted in my heart. I have a niece who I dote on the most. That niece used to be on good terms with Li Yunxin. I've had dealings with that person before." When talking about these things, Yin Pingji explained in more detail. There was no wind outside the room, but the candlelight in the room rose straight up, without the slightest tremble. When the magistrate heard him talk about Li Yunxin, his expression was very calm. When he finished, the magistrate frowned and said, "You mean this Li Yunxin killed Li Yaoxi in the court in front of 2 cultivators?" "Yes. At that time I didn't know he had connections with the Langya Paradise. I only thought he was a wild Daoist with some tricks. But now that I think about it, that matter must have been done by him. It's just that the cultivation of those two cultivators was too shallow, I couldn't see it. You also said that that night, Li Yunxin went to your niece's house. How did you know about this? Yin Pingji hesitated a little. There was a young man who really liked my niece. Later he told me. So you said he went to your niece's house, and left. The next day you found your niece. Only a broken limb was left? So you think it was that Li Yunxin who did it? The magistrate was silent for a while. This person's identity, that kind of means, is not impossible. But what do you want? Even I have to temporarily avoid Ling Kongzi. That girl wants me to interrogate myself? She doesn't know that there is an unwritten rule between the Daqing state and the Daotong. The Daotong can't touch officials above the 5th rank, at least not like this. She wants me to interrogate myself? That's the biggest joke in the world. But since I also have to temporarily avoid the brunt, what do you want to do? That Li Yunxin's background is not smaller than Ling Kongzi's. I can't help you. Indeed, I can't do anything to him. Yin Pingji said hatefully, but he touched my heart. How can I let it go like this? That day I knew that he was very good to that Lu Laodao. Someone also told me that Song Yunzi of the Pill Cauldron sect said that Lao Dao is Li Yunxin's tribulation, his heart. In short, he is an extremely important person. He harmed my niece. I'll wait until he is taken away by that Ling Kongzi. Magistrate Zhao frowned. If you want to do this, I can't be bothered. As long as you do it cleanly and cleanly. But why are you telling me? It's also a proof of allegiance to you. Yin Pingji gritted his teeth. In the past, your humble servant only thought about keeping this family business safe and sound, and had no other thoughts. But now that my niece has died tragically, I have no way to deal with that chief evil, this kind of anger. Magistrate Zhao raised a hand, interrupting Yin Pingji's words. For the time being, I will listen to what you say. You should also understand that not all of it is the truth, but let it go at this point. I will temporarily accept this painting of yours. Coincidentally, it is also useful. As for other matters, wait until you take care of your own affairs. I will consider it again. You can leave now. Yin Pingji was slightly stunned. But he quickly stood up. Yes. After he left the room, Magistrate Zhao then carefully spread out this rare scroll on the table, greedily appreciating it. The candlelight was dim and he had stayed in this room for a long time, so his eyes were somewhat tired. Thus, he didn't notice that there was an old man in the painting. He moved slightly. Chapter 107. After listening to Song Yunzi's narration, Lu Ling pondered for a while. Then she said softly, "Am I thinking too much?" Song Yunzi didn't know if this fairy was asking her or what she was asking. Thus she only cautiously kept quiet and didn't dare to leave. Lu Ling played with the stem of the grape for a while before throwing it on the table. "Did you send someone to spread that matter?" "Yes." Song Yunzi hurriedly said, "That Yin Pingji already knows about it. At this time he probably thinks that Li Yunxin killed his niece, and will definitely find trouble with that Lao Dao. But, if you want to deal with that Lao Dao and cripple Li Yunxin, there are many ways. Why do you have to go through all this trouble?" Ling Kongzi smiled slightly. "It's not because of him. All right, you can leave." She raised her head and looked outside. "I'm not stupid." When Li Yunxin returned to the Dragon King Temple, there was a slight breeze. He passed through the front yard and entered the backyard. He saw Lu Laodao waiting for him in the yard. The old man was generous today and prepared a table full of food and wine. The stone table couldn't fit all of them, so he used a square table with cloud patterns. There was also a seat under it. The old man sat in front of the table. As soon as Li Yunxin entered the door, he found that the old man was looking at him with bright eyes. He was slightly surprised at first, then he smiled. "What are you doing?" But Lu Laodao only knelt and stood up. He poured 2 cups of wine and said in a solemn and serious tone, "Brother Axon, come and sit." Li Yunxin shook his head. "It's so formal." But he still walked to the seat, took off his shoes and sat down. The banquet was set next to the pond in the small courtyard and there was some steam. But the steam steamed the other plants in the courtyard and the smell was very sweet. The old Daoist took a deep breath of the fragrant air and drank a cup of wine. Li Yunxin also wanted to take a glass, but Lao Dao quickly stopped him. "Brother Axen, you still have important things to do. You shouldn't drink." Li Yunxin smiled and put down his cup. Lao Dao poured himself another cup and drank it. Only then did he let out a long sigh. Brother Xen, you're leaving, aren't you? Li Yunxin blinked. I know you're leaving. Lao Dao said seriously. Lao Dao, I'm not as smart as you, but I feel that I'm more quick-witted than most people. You've taught me all these days. If I still don't know, it would be a waste of your efforts. Brother Xen, you said you want to kill them all. Lao Dao, I know you said that in a moment of anger. But I'm sure you have other ways. You won't go to Langyi Cave Heaven with Ling Kongzi. I know that. You like to be free and unrestrained. Going to that kind of place is going to kill you. Well said. Li Yunxin nodded approvingly. So I think you want to escape. Make some trouble and leave by yourself. These days you've been wandering around the city, painting everywhere, and went to the Qiao family's house to do something. These are all arrangements, right? Speaking of this, Lao Dao drank another cup of wine. It seemed that he had gathered some courage and said, Brother Xen, I want to go with you. Li Yunxin was using chopsticks to pick out the shredded ginger from the stir-fried vegetables. Hearing Lao Dao's words, he subconsciously made an "ah" sound and turned to look at him. Go with me. Brother Xen, don't think that I, Lao Dao, am afraid of trouble. Lao Dao stared at him with wide eyes and a very serious expression, so Li Yunxin knew that this little old man drank 3 cups of wine and got drunk again. Lao Dao, my surname is Lu. Brother Xen has never asked my real name and I didn't tell you either. In fact, my real name is Lu Gongzan. Lao Dao said this and paused, looking at Li Yunxin with a little expectation. But when he found that Li Yunxin didn't have any feelings about this name, he sighed. I'm confused. At that time, you were... Lao Dao's most famous time was more than 30 years ago. At that time, alas, I used to be near the city of Wei, a well-known leader. Brother Xen should also know what he meant by master. In fact, I was a bandit. When Shirquizi told you about my past, I was just coaxing her. When I was young, my family was poor, but I was smart. I learned some tricks of the Jianghu, learned some words, and mingled with a group of ruffians. I felt that God was being unfair to me. How could a smart, literate person like me not be able to make a name for myself and live in poverty? I had a dispute with a rich family in the village and accidentally stabbed him. I was afraid that the government would arrest me, so I ran away. I met Meng Ao. At that time he was about 20 and learned some martial arts. Although I didn't know martial arts, I wasn't a pedantic scholar. We were like old friends at first sight and said that there were so many injustices in the world. Why not do justice for God? Hearing this, Li Yunxin smiled slightly, raised his thumb and continued to eat slowly. Lao Dao drank another cup of wine and laughed. Hee, do justice for God. We had good intentions. We heard that the rich were heartless, so we went to kill them. We heard that there was a group of bandits, so we went to kill them. Sometimes we pretended to be escorts and walked back and forth on the mountain roads and killed those who came to rob us. At that time we didn't have a stronghold and didn't have a fixed residence, so we could only wander around. On one side we hid from the government and on the other we hid from the underworld who came to seek revenge. There were more than 10 of us and we were brave. That Meng Ao was skilled in martial arts and killed many people, so people called him the man-killer ghost. Didn't know martial arts, but I made plans and left everything to them. They called me the ghost teller. The ghost teller Lu Gongzan. At that time, in the underworld of Weiqing, who didn't know my name. Lao Dao closed his eyes and immersed himself in the past for a while, then he knelt down again and sighed. Then something happened. In the past, when they went to do something, I was the one who planned it. My brothers were afraid that I didn't know martial arts and would make an accident, so they only asked me to guard the rear. One day I drank too much, so I followed them. That time, it was a rich family who killed a tenant farmer for the autumn rent. When my brothers heard this, they said they wanted to get rid of the evil. I pretended to be a teacher and went to the village where that family was located to investigate for 4 days, and came back with a plan to attack from within and without. Until that day, everything went smoothly and I was also there. But at that time, when I saw them kill people, I felt unhappy. That person's first wife and several concubines were all killed, and they even wanted to kill his only son. I said, what does it have to do with this child? Meng Ao said to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Anyway, in the end, I also knew that they killed people. But I only listened to them. This time I saw them kill with my own eyes. After I went back I couldn't calm down. Moreover, after a few days I found out that person wasn't killed by that rich family. I just shouted, urged for some rent and set a date. After that person went back he was so anxious that he died. And the scoundrel who had a grudge against that rich family deliberately made up this story. Hearing this, Li Yunxin sighed. That's why when there was news in the past I didn't dare to criticize immediately. There must be a reversal. The drunk Lao Dao didn't think about the meaning of news. He only knew that he agreed with his words. So he sighed again. Sigh. After that incident, I happened to have a girl I liked, so I was disheartened and didn't want to do it anymore. We said that we were enforcing justice. But in fact, how many people did we kill? I don't know. What about the money we got? It was all our own expenses. In fact, we were no different from bandits. I wanted to leave but Meng Ao didn't allow it. The two of us quarreled and in the end I left. After marrying that girl I bought some land with the money I had and I could be considered rich. So, 3 years passed. After 3 years I had a son and a daughter. I gradually forgot the past. And no one could find me. That year when the new year was approaching, I went to the city of Wei to buy some New Year goods. It took me 2 days to go back and forth, so I stayed in the city of Wei for 1 night. I went back the next night, went back. When Lu Lao Dao said this he kept repeating these 2 words with his eyes wide open. Li Yunxin sighed in his heart, put down his chopsticks and poured him a glass of wine. Lu Lao Dao took it and drank it. He paused for a while then said, when I went back I saw my wife, a son and a daughter were all killed. The murderer drank the wine in my house and was sitting in the room. When he saw me he wanted to kill me. Later I found out that someone told him that I raped innocent people, colluded with the government and oppressed the people in the village. And the person who told him this was a scoundrel in the village. Because he saw my beautiful wife he came to flirt with her and I ran into him. I am very popular in the village so someone taught him a good lesson for me. And this scoundrel harbored hatred in his heart and ran into the murderer by chance. Lu Lao Dao stared into the distance for a while and wiped his face fiercely. Brother X, and do you know who the murderer is? Li Yunxin sighed. Meng Ao. Lu Lao Dao was stunned at first and then smiled bitterly. Yes. Brother Xen is such a smart person, how could he not know? It's Meng Ao. After I left, they couldn't make a living. In the end they were ambushed and scattered. That Meng Ao finally made a business without any capital. But near the end of the year the government was strict and his business was not good. He came here alone, and met that scoundrel. He heard the scoundrel lie, saying that he remembered the time when we were together, enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. So he drank wine and came to my house. He killed my wife with 1 strike, my son with another strike and my daughter with another strike. After that he sat in the house and continued drinking, waiting for me to come back. Li Yunxin gently stroked the rim of the wine cup. And then, that Meng Ao finally recognized me. He wanted to kill himself to atone for his sins. But at that time, my heart was empty. I ought to have been grieving. But I don't know why. At that time my mind was blank. I was just thinking about one thing. The cycle of heaven, retribution is not good. I told that Meng Ao die. Death is naturally a very easy thing to do. If you die, your soul will be taken away by Black Bai Yanjun, and your memory will be erased. Your pain and guilt will also be gone. But to live, with an uneasy conscience, to live in guilt, is the most difficult thing. I wanted him to kill that scoundrel and then think about that scene every day, and live day by day. It was the same. Lu Lao Dao stared straight at Li Yunxin, so I came to the city of Wei and followed my master. I didn't want to marry anymore. I am also living in remorse. That Meng Ao later found me and went to the Qiao family to be an escort. I understood that this person wanted to protect me, to take care of me. Take care of me. Without his care, this Dragon King temple couldn't be kept in my hands until now. He did take care of me. Lu Lao Dao said in a low voice, after so many years. So many things those at that time. I also gradually let go. But, so when he was thrown into prison, you were in a hurry to run around. Li Yunxin held the wine cup with his fingers, slowly swirling it by his lips, only smelling the fragrance of the wine. But you didn't look. He was taken out and you didn't ask where he went. I was confused at first, but I didn't expect it to be like this. So Brother Xian. Lao Dao, I am not a person who is afraid of death. Maybe I was before, but now. Brother Xian, if you want to go, take me with you. Lu Lao Dao put his hands on the table. If you go to the ends of the earth, I will also go to the ends of the earth. Today I did something wrong when I was young and then I didn't do anything. Now I'm not far from death. If I don't do something, I really won't be able to do it. Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then drank the wine and smiled. He put down the wine cup and gently waved his hand. You are also a person with a story. But don't be so excited. Old Lu, you have to remember one thing. He said with a smile, maybe I like to make fun, maybe I lie. But in some things I don't like to lie. Standing in the yard and saying some harsh words, then leaving you and running away, what kind of words is that? That's why I won't run away. As for me, I plan to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Before I read 2 lines of a poem to you. I don't know the true face of Mount Lu, only because I am in this mountain. That is to say, in fact, you are also part of my plan. I want to get away and I need your help. You don't need to ask me how to help first. It's good that you know. I did something to make the devil and Lu Ling fight, mainly to kill them together. Of course, I need to make some adjustments in the meantime. But that's the general idea. As for what you need to do, you will know slowly. These days I just made a little effort. Lu Lao Dao was stunned for a while, then he blinked his eyes. Even if his mind was numbed by alcohol, this unexpected news still brought him enough surprise. He struggled to think for a while, then suddenly widened his eyes. That day Ling Kongzi said that he would take you away in 3 days. Then doesn't that mean they are really going to fight tomorrow? Li Yunxin smiled and shook his head. It's not a fight between children. There is no such thing as a fight when the day is agreed. Lao Dao frowned. When is that? I still need to prepare tonight. Li Yunxin stood up, brushed his sleeves and put his hands behind his back. It's already here. As soon as his voice fell, muffled thunder rolled through the clouds, crushing all the water vapor in the clouds. The first raindrop of the night knocked on the edge of the silver cup, making a clanging sound. Chapter 108. Before the old man's astonishment faded away, Li Yunxin had already looked up to the sky. The clear night sky quickly darkened, and the rolling clouds pushed by the strong wind soon covered the moon and stars. The rain clouds were so low that it seemed as if they could touch it by standing on the roof, tiptoeing and stretching their arms. But Li Yunxin knew that such clouds were at least 1,000 meters above the ground. He squinted his eyes, but he couldn't see it. So he put his middle finger and index finger together and brushed his eyes. The impure power of wish and spiritual power in his body poured into his eyes, and he finally saw clearly what was in the thick clouds. He stared at it for a while and finally let out a long sigh. Not bad. Not as ugly as I thought. In the world where he came from, the story of the dragon having 9 sons was that dragons are naturally lascivious. They might have intercourse with some strange animals on the road. There were 9 dragon sons born from the intercourse of the dragon and the animal. So he was not sure what the original body of the 9th young master Qi looked like. In fact, he was not sure what the real dragon looked like. But now he finally saw it. Thousands of meters above the sky, in the clouds that were rolling and flashing with lightning, a giant beast that looked like both a dragon and a dragon was rushing toward the city of Wei. It was said that Qi had the head of a dragon and the body of a fish. But its actual body was extremely long. At a glance, it was almost the same as the dragon in his mind. But if he looked carefully in the flickering lightning, he could still see that there was a long dorsal fin on its back, not the hair of a dragon. But even so, it still had a dragon's head. It really had a pair of antler coral-like horns, shining brilliantly in the flickering lightning. 2 extremely long and seemingly extremely soft and tough whiskers fluttered at the side of its body, glowing with a faint golden light. Its horns were a dark steel-green color, and its sideburns were a snow-white color. Li Yunxin looked at it for a while and smiled in surprise. This color is really trendy. After the first drop of rain fell, it quickly became a downpour. It was the first time for Li Yunxin to see the dragon's son summon clouds and bring rain. Every time it breathed heavily, clouds and mist rose from its nostrils and swelled with the wind, turning into dense rain clouds that couldn't be dispersed. Every time it shook its body, there would be electric snakes slithering out from between its scales and rolling through the dark clouds. It came with wind and thunder, and by the time Li Yunxin had said 3 sentences, the rain had already drenched his entire body. However, he wiped his face and laughed out loud. How satisfying. Then he waved his hand towards the house. Sword. As soon as he finished speaking, a bolt of lightning cut through the dark night and shot straight into his palm. Li Yunxin held the sword given to him by Yunxin, then casually flung it in front of him. He then knelt down on the wet mat and closed his eyes. Lu Laodao looked at him in a daze and stayed in the rain with him. Until he knelt down, he asked, "Brother Exen, what are you doing?" "Watching tigers fight," he said. But the old Taoist could not hear what he was saying in the rain. In fact, there was no way to hear it. After Li Yunxin finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve and a gentle force knocked Laodao out and knocked him into the room. Then Li Yunxin held the hilt of the sword in front of his knees again, and sat still in the heavy rain. After 3 breaths, the whole city of Wei was covered in water vapor. Li Yunxin heard the sound of people stepping on the water. The white-clothed Ling Kongzi still looked dignified and plain. Her hair was soft and her clothes were dry. Not a single drop of rain could touch her body, and it was blocked by the magic weapon. She walked to Li Yunxin's side and looked at the cup that was filled with rainwater, the thin bamboo that was bent over after being hit, and the lotus that was almost submerged in the water. Then she looked at Li Yunxin's hand. The hand holding the sword was trembling slightly. In fact, Li Yunxin was also trembling in the heavy rain as if he was afraid of the cold. So she asked, "I don't see cultivators trembling. Are you afraid?" But Li Yunxin's voice was calm as usual, as if he was chatting in a warm afternoon without a trace of trembling, because it hurts. Ling Kongzi nodded. "You are on the verge of death. Especially when it's raining like tonight. Everyone will say, 'The Dragon King is angry,' or something like that. But the original statue of Dragon King in the temple was replaced by yours. In that case, you must have left some of the dragon's qi in the statue. I miss him in my heart, but I miss you too." Li Yunxin took a deep breath full of moisture and opened his eyes slightly. He was surprised to find that Ling Kongzi was also kneeling in front of him. So he smiled, "You are very talkative today." The more he talked, the more complacent he felt, the more fearful he felt. "You are the latter. What are you worried about?" Ling Kongzi raised his head slightly to glance at the sky, and then he said, "You've done many things in these past few days. That day I believed 70% of what you said. But these days you have done these things, so I can only believe 30% of it. I have thought about it for 3 days, but I still can't figure out what you are going to do. But these are not important. I have put a death curse on the city of Wei. As long as I think about it, no one can escape. If you are going to fake your death and try to practice the way of gods and ghosts, then I can tell you now, this death curse can also kill souls. So if you turn back and give up now, it is still not too late." Li Yunxin was silent for a while and opened his eyes to look at her. "What I do and say is easy to be misunderstood. If I say that I am really experiencing the last happy time of being a human, you will not believe me. And people like you who are favored by God have always been confident in themselves. You have your own worldview, logic system, and judgment standard. Everything I have said is just for your reference. So, you can't be relieved before you see me die. It is the same with Dragon's Son." Li Yunxin raised his head in the heavy rain with difficulty and looked up at the sky. Dragon's Son was hovering over the city of Wei as if looking for them, and also seemed to be arranging something. "I told him that I would help him, but he is doing it again. In such a short time, so much power of hope gathered on me, I will become very painful, and my ability will be greatly reduced. So, in fact, he does not completely believe my words. Both of you said you believe me, but in fact you do not. But it doesn't matter. When you see my soul dispersing, you will no longer doubt me." As Li Yunxin said, he grabbed the slender white sword with his trembling hand. "Since you have confidence in yourself, what are you waiting for?" It seemed that because of the severe pain, his hand slipped on the edge of the sword when he held it. The extremely sharp blade easily cut through his hand, and cut off his little finger like cutting tofu. As for Li Yunxin, her face actually revealed a slight expression, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. So Ling Kongzi realized he was really in pain. It was so painful that compared to the pain of his finger being cut off and then being drenched by the rain, it was a kind of enjoyment. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.